Throws it inside, deflected from Williams, and that's it. It's over. Oklahoma City rebounds from a 42-point loss and takes a commanding 3-1 lead in this Western Conference final.
It's over. Not officially over yet, but that was the final call of Game 4. OKC in Minnesota. It is effectively over. That series is not going to extend past 5 games, more likely than not. Oklahoma City is a buzzsaw. Minnesota had their game in Game 3, had an opportunity last night, and completely ended up squandering it in the end. Welcome into the Kevin Sheehan Show. No Kevin this entire week. You get me today, Linnell tomorrow, and then yours truly the rest of the week on Thursday and Friday. I woke up this morning and caught up on this game. I did not stay up. I wake up at 4:30. I'm just not staying up till midnight to watch a basketball game. But I woke up this morning and watching it. You know, I had this theory entering this NBA postseason that Anthony Edwards, this was his time to shine. This was going to be the postseason where the Ant-Man becomes the face of the league, from that conversation that really dominated a boring season in the early portions of it because LeBron said he didn't want to be the face of the league anymore at 40 years old. And then Steph and Kevin Durant aren't the face of the league at 40 years old. So the question was, who is? It's not Jokic, because Jokic doesn't want to be here half the time. He just wants to be chilling in Serbia with his horses. Everyone thought Anthony Edwards was going to be the guy that stepped up, carried the flag for the NBA. And after watching last night, after watching this entire postseason, he is very clearly not the face of the NBA. It is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander that for the next couple of years at least is going to be the face of the NBA. SGA was sensational yesterday. He was a rebound shy of a triple-double. Should have channeled his Angel Reese a little bit there, get one extra rebound off one of his own misses. Would have had a triple-double. But SGA has been fantastic for all but one game, and that one game was Game 3 of this series, and then he responded with 40, 10, and 9. I know he's a Canadian. Maybe that bothers some of you. I have to be honest. I don't really want a Canadian being the face of the league. Personally, I want an American. I'm not very patriotic all the time, but that's one of the things where I will plant the flag on and say I would like an American to be the face of the league. So I was rooting for Anthony Edwards. We've been spoiled with LeBron and Durant and Steph. And now with this international wave of superstars, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Giannis and Jokic, I mean, the best like 4 or 5 players in this league are no longer American. That makes me very worried for what the 2028 Olympics are going to look like, but that is neither here nor there. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander performs in the big moments. His personality is kind of what holds him back, I think, a lot in these conversations. I won't even say it's because he plays in Oklahoma City, because he's on commercials. He has billboards. He does like underwear shoots. That doesn't appeal to me. Maybe it appeals to you. But he's put in a spotlight to where you can see Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, but he's not nearly as funny, at least on social media, as a guy like Anthony Edwards. So maybe that holds him back a little bit from being the face of the league. When LeBron was at his peak, LeBron was everywhere. You could not go on the internet. You could not turn on any sort of sports-related television show that had any semblance of the NBA on it and not see LeBron James. You don't see Shai Gilgeous-Alexander all the time, but you should, because he's a consistent player. He's the MVP of the league. I mean, really, it is a tragedy, I think, more than anything, that the companies that are in business with the NBA, particularly a 4-letter company, that they do a disservice, a massive disservice, to not promote one of the youngest guys in the league, in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, not promote the guy that won their MVP. They'd rather talk about the Lakers offseason. They'd rather talk about what's Kevin Durant going to do this offseason. Like, their topics of discussion are very poor when it comes to actually lifting the games up. So I would like to see them get significantly better at that, but Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is him. Anthony Edwards did not play well last night, and that was a game where I thought he really had to play well last night. And I think you can almost extend his slight shortcomings to the series prior as well. Minnesota taking on Golden State without Steph Curry, that should have been a very, very easy series. It should have been Anthony Edwards dominating that series, and he didn't play poorly. But I didn't walk away from that series thinking, wow, how great was Anthony Edwards? I walked away from that series, at least in the final games, being like, man, Julius Randle, welcome back to the party, my friend. People don't know. I was a big Julius Randle guy coming out of high school. You wouldn't know that because I was like in college when that happened and it was a virtual nobody. But I was a big Julius Randle guy when he was coming out of high school because he was in that same group of Jabari Parker and Andrew Wiggins. And Andrew Wiggins and Jabari Parker were the clear number 1 and number 2. So because I wanted to be a little bit against the grain, I decided that I was going to be a Julius Randle fan. And then Julius Randle took Kentucky as like an 8 or a 9 seed to the NCAA tournament final before losing to Shabazz Napier. Good times all around. But I've been a Julius Randle guy for almost a decade now. Ages me a little bit, but almost a decade. I thought he was going to play way better. He stunk last night. I mean, that guy, he did play. I'm seeing highlights of him on my television screen. He did play. He was, in fact, in the game. He did not play well. That guy had 5 points. Anthony Edwards had 16 points. How do you expect to beat this well-oiled machine that is Oklahoma City if your two superstars can't do a damn thing? And I know Anthony Edwards is facing all kinds of different defensive matchups, but like, so I don't care.
It's the playoffs.
It's a play. Like, you got to go out there and be great. If you're going to be the face of the league, if they're going to throw Baldy Alex Caruso at you, sick, go dominate him. If they're going to throw Lou Dort at you, sick, go dominate him. That's why we loved him last year, because he was a killer. We thought this was like the second coming, partially tongue-in-cheek here to all the old heads here. Don't get mad at me. We thought he was like the second coming of one Michael Jordan. We're like, hey, is Michael Jordan actually his father? Like, we don't know what's going on here.
The side-by-side, you
saw some similarities. You watch the way they play. You see some similarities. I mean, that could just be like a studying thing. Anthony Edwards studying Michael Jordan's game. But that killer mentality, I mean, I haven't seen that killer mentality from Anthony Edwards. Certainly not in this series. Like, maybe in the first round of the playoffs, you saw it a little bit. In games against Golden State, you saw it. But against Oklahoma City, where is the killer? Where is the dog? The dog's in a cage. I ain't see him. I don't see him at all. And I need him to be significantly better if we're going to call this dude the face of the league. He had 2 shots in the first half. Like, you understand what you're going up against in this juggernaut that is OKC, potentially being down 3-1 and then going back to Oklahoma City, who is that Oklahoma City fan base, partially because there's not a whole lot to do in Oklahoma this time of year, but they are a ravenous bunch. They pack the gills of that arena. They are loud. They be wearing their blue. Sometimes they be wearing their white if they're doing a little bit of the whiteout situation going on there. But you don't want to go back in there down 3-1. And that guy took 1 shot in the first quarter, 1 shot in the second quarter. As a superstar, you can't have that. You can't have that. You got to be significantly better than that if you are going to be deemed the face of the league. And this is what's going to happen to him this offseason. It happens to just about everybody. So this is kind of the normal like pits and falls of being a really great player in this league. But we as an NBA fan base had lifted you up and set some expectations for you. Because you have now fallen short and will fall short of those expectations, it is now looked at as a slight to us, the NBA fans, and people are going to start to turn on Anthony Edwards. It has happened many a times before. It will happen many a times moving forward. There's a certain like path that you have to take when it comes to winning championships. And then once you deviate from that path, we no longer like you anymore, and we're going to tear you down. We're doing that with Patrick Mahomes in the NFL. Everybody loved Patrick Mahomes because he beat Tom Brady. Well, he didn't beat Tom Brady, but he started to be the next Tom Brady, and then he was like too close to that Tom Brady. Now we don't like him anymore. His family didn't help with that, but now we don't like him anymore. Anthony Edwards is getting something very similar. He took down his idol last year in Kevin Durant. He took down the Warriors this year, took down the Lakers this year. You're like, all right, here we go. Grim Reaper Anthony Edwards. But now we can't take down Oklahoma City. And you're like, I don't know. You know, is he really that good? Like, I don't know. Where's that killer? Where's that dog? Can't find it. They just have to be significantly better if they want to even make this a game 6, make it to a game 6. I don't think they will. The Thunder are massive favorites in game number 5. We got that line already for all my DGens, my gamblers out there. That's already 8.5. I can't believe I'm going to say this, Max. Like the words that are about to come out of my mouth don't even feel like they're real. Minnesota misses Karl Anthony Towns. Getting rid of him might have been a mistake. Karl Anthony Towns was really good in game number 3 for Indiana. Now, I am a leader of the pack when it comes to anti-Karl Anthony Towns. Don't like him. Hate watch him. It's not because of the flamboyance. I don't really care about that. It doesn't bother me at all. It's because I don't like the way that he plays. I think he should be way better. I do not like it. Minnesota needs a Karl Anthony Towns because Julius Randle's not a legit number 2 in the year of our Lord 2025. I don't even know if Karl Anthony Towns is a legit number 2 in the year of our Lord 2025, especially going up against this Oklahoma City team. I don't know that he would body Chet Holmgren the way that I think a guy should body Chet Holmgren, given the size discrepancy, but that is neither here nor there. They need a legitimate second option that is not Jaden McDaniels, that is not Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I almost didn't believe Jaden McDaniels was a real person at one point this year in the NBA. I thought it was just that one dude that's a Ravens fan that trolled us on social media for a little bit because he didn't know who Jaden Daniels was.
Mm-hmm.
They started saying Jaden McDaniels on television, and I was like, am I tripping off of something? I had THC lemonade last week. Am I tripping off the THC lemonade? Like, what's still going on over here? Apparently, Jaden McDaniels is, in fact, a real person. If he's your number 2 scorer, you're in trouble. You're in trouble. Nickeil Alexander-Walker off the bench at 23 last night. If he's your number 1 scorer, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
I mean, I love Dante, repping for us. You're in trouble. Like, I don't want, if Dante DiVincenzo was the one that is taking late game shots, which he was yesterday in game number 4, what is the point of even playing? Can we just speed this thing up? And I understand, like, it was a close game. It was a 2-point game. I get that. Sometimes you just know, man, when is Dante being the one that's taking your closing shots? When it's Nickeil Alexander-Walker that you're relying on for a bucket late, I don't care what the score is. Sometimes you just know. That's a hooper's dream right there. By the way, I do just want to address something before I get to a nice what do you got? I don't love the idea of calling Shai Gilgeous-Alexander a foul merchant. I think that's lazy. I think that's a lazy take from people on television that just want to find a way to knock Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, because outside of the foul merchant thing, the guy's like almost a perfect point guard. He gives effort on defense. Not a great defender, but he gives effort on defense. He's not like some of the other guys that we have seen who have won MVPs and just completely take off when it comes to the defensive side. Pretty decent rebounder, gives effort. That's all you need on rebounding. Rebounding is literally just the most effort-based statistic that you are going to find in basketball. Gives effort on rebounds, great vision, and obviously he can score with the best of them, but he's not just shooting 1,001 three-pointers. He did shoot 7 last night, but he's not shooting 1,001 three-pointers. You get to the free throw line when you go to the basket. That is just a general rule of thumb in NBA basketball. You get to the free throw line when you go to the basket. If you want more free throws, go closer to the basket where there are more bodies and you're more likely to get hit, and the refs are more likely to call that. If you're shooting 8,000 three-pointers, you're not getting fouled that often out there. So I like what he does. I don't think he's a free throw merchant at all. I don't even know what that means sometimes. I think that's such a lazy trigger word almost. Like, it triggers me. Maybe it doesn't trigger you. It triggers me. I hate when people call other people free throw merchants. I didn't like it when they did it with James Harden, even though Harden's lifestyle was a little bit more annoying than Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. If you go close to the basket, you are going to get free throws. I'm going to make a local tie to this real quick before I get to a what do you got. Oklahoma City and watching them work should inspire Wizards fans, because there is not a number 1 overall pick on that roster. I know we're reaching at the bottom of the barrel. I'm still furious that our Washington Wizards did not get the savior Cooper Flag. Furious about that. The NBA rigged. They hooked up Dallas because Dallas sent Luka's ass, James Gordon looking old boy, to Los Angeles. They hooked Dallas up. Don't like it at all. I'm furious Cooper Flag is not coming here. It is optimistic to me that you can still rebuild and build a great championship team without just relying on a bunch of number 1 overall picks. I mean, Chet Holmgren was a number 2 overall pick. The other guys were lottery picks, most of them, but they were not number 1 overall picks. Maybe the next Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who they actually didn't draft. He was a part of that Paul George trade to get Paul George and Kawhi to the Los Angeles Clippers. By far the worst trade in NBA history at this point, because the Clippers have stunk. Paul George doesn't even play there anymore, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is about to win a championship and MVP for a small market Oklahoma City Thunder. But it does make me optimistic that the Wizards can utilize that 6th overall pick. I think Bub Carrington was great this year. I think some of the guys that they drafted this year were really good. Sarr was good at points this year. Bub, I thought, was the best of the bunch. But even Keyshawn George, I liked watching him this year. So it does make me optimistic that with smart leadership, the Wizards could eventually, maybe, hopefully, please, get to even just a fraction of where Oklahoma City is. I'll take 50 wins. I'm not asking for a championship right away, Max. I just want 50 wins. The Commanders just got more than 10 wins for the first time in my lifetime this past season. I think it's possible that in the next 3 or 4, the Wizards could come away with 50 wins. I feel like I'm not asking too much when I ask that. But if you're a Wizards fan, a diehard, if you're still out there somewhere, You should at least be somewhat optimistic about that. All right, before we get on to the biggest WNBA story, maybe the biggest story, period, right now in sports, Max, hit me with a quick, what do you got? All right, so I was big lax guy over the weekend. I was doing some lacrosse coverage for Sirius XM College Lacrosse National Championships over Memorial Day weekend. Maryland was excellent on Saturday.
You were getting the 106.7 fam in the mix too.
I was getting
Big Strobes.
I was getting little Ben Strober in there too. He did a great job, by the way, covering Maryland lacrosse this season. And he did a great job with me yesterday, so I was happy to have Ben on. But I was covering lacrosse. Loved what Maryland did against Syracuse on Saturday. Terps in action. The Terps they're frequent when it comes to championship weekend. They're frequent when it comes to playing in the national championship. Unfortunately, the frequency stops there because they are not frequently winning the national championship. They ran into a buzzsaw yesterday with Cornell, and arguably one of the best college lacrosse players in the history of the sport.
It's incredible.
And a guy named CJ Kirst. You a last guy? You locked in?
So I tapped in yesterday because it's the Natty, and I had a feeling we were going to talk about it, and I knew you were doing the show yesterday. And Ben has been he's been talking about Maryland lacrosse since he started. But he covers the team, does play-by-play and all that for them every now and again. So I don't blame him. But yeah, I was watching a little bit yesterday, and it was kind of my lay down, turn the lights off, nap time. But yeah, CJ Kirst scored 4 in a row, and then I was like, okay, I think I can shut my eyes now.
As soon as he scored the first one, you're like, uh-oh, this is going to be tough for Maryland.
Yeah.
Because CJ Kirst didn't score a single goal against Penn State. Cornell's still able to win it. That guy had scored, by the way, 76 goals prior to Saturday. 76, not in his career in the season. He didn't score a single one against Penn State. Took him a while to score against Maryland, and then as soon as he scored against Maryland, I was like, uh-oh, this is not good. The biggest Achilles heel for John Tillman, who's been a sensational coach in college lacrosse for almost 2 decades now. The biggest Achilles heel for him is that the preparation time is not in his favor. He loves a good week-long preparation. Get all the bells and whistles ready, dot the I's, cross the T's, find ways to leverage matchups that benefit Maryland. And he's done such a good job of that, again, for almost 20 years now as the head coach of Maryland lacrosse. But with a day and a half to prepare for Cornell, and last year a day and a half to prepare for Notre Dame, and you can go on and on and on. They've been to 9 championships with him. He's won 2 of them. You'll take 2 championships, but you'd like a lot more than 2 if you go 9 appearances. They just always fall short. And once CJ Kirst got it going, they just couldn't stop him. That dude scored 6 goals in the national championship game. That's 82 on the year. That's tied for the most ever. The game itself was great. I mean, Logan McNanny, who is Maryland's goalie, one of the best, if not the best in the history of college lacrosse. He had started 4 full seasons, Max. I don't know if you knew this. Started 4 full seasons. He played a national championship every single time.
Damn.
I mean, that's an insane track record to have as a guy between the pipes. He had entered the game with like a 70% save percentage, which, if you know anything about lacrosse, that is gargantuan.
It's ridiculously good.
Great goalies have like a 54% save percentage. This dude walked in there with a 70, and I was like, I can't wait to see this great defense versus great offense. But as it generally tends to go, great offense always beats great defense. I'm sorry. I know, old heads. Defense wins championships. Certainly not in lacrosse. Great offense is always going to beat great defense. All right, when we get back, I want to get into the biggest storyline of the WNBA. We do have a poll question on our Twitter page right now, and this is very important. I know it's May, but it's an important subject. Is lemonade a juice? I want you to go vote on that poll question. We're going to take some of your calls on this controversial topic in about 40 minutes. Is lemonade a juice? It's going to be a debate between myself, Max, video producer Brian's jumping in on this. So I want everybody to go vote on that poll question. Is lemonade a juice at Team 980? It's on my Twitter as well at the Denton Day. That conversation in 40 minutes. But coming up next, I hope you didn't buy a ticket to the Fever Mystics game tomorrow with the intention of seeing Caitlin Clark. If you did, I'll tell you why you're out of luck next. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show with Denton Day sitting in on the Team 980. If you're hoping for a changing of the name, I have bad news for you. I'll share that with you in 15 minutes. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show. Denton Day sitting in for Kevin on the Team 980 Twitter at the Denton Day. We have a poll question up on the Team 980's Twitter page that I need everybody to stop what you're doing and go and listen to, or go and answer rather. Is lemonade a juice? It's a debate that's been raging inside my head. We're going to take it to the airwaves in about 30 minutes here on the show. We'll take your phone calls on it if you're passionate about it. Just go to the Twitter page, Team 980, and vote for that. If you bought tickets to see the Mystics play Caitlin Clark in Baltimore tomorrow, I have terrible news for you. You probably missed this because it flew very much under the radar this weekend in what was a busy weekend in sports, but also not in sports because, you know, you're honoring those that had lost their lives saving this country and honoring this country. Caitlin Clark is going to miss at least 2 weeks for the Indiana Fever. And this one came like a good RKO out of nowhere. I didn't see this one at all. I was watching a little bit of the Fever Liberty over the weekend prior to this injury, and I didn't see any situation with Caitlin Clark. She looked perfectly healthy. There were some officiating issues at the end of that game, which this is basketball. There are going to be officiating issues at the end of games, but there was no point where I looked at Caitlin Clark and said, oh, she's hobbling. There was no point where you could see maybe something in the quad. It's a strained quad. There was no point where you could see maybe something pop, her kind of grimace and hold the quad. There was none of that. So on Sunday or Monday, whatever the day ended up actually being, you got the news on Twitter that she's going to be gone for a little bit. You're like, oh no. Those injuries that you don't see sometimes are often the scariest, but it's significantly more scary for the WNBA than it is for us, right? Caitlin Clark is the biggest needle mover in sports right now. NFL is taking a little bit of time off. Once the NFL comes back in, the NFL dominates everything. Understood. But outside of the NFL, in terms of a singular person, there is no greater draw in sports right now than Caitlin Clark. The WNBA has learned that tenfold. She has made that league an awful lot of money. She's not the only star player in that league, but she is certainly the one that has become the cash cow. In fact, it is a little ironic because the Caitlin Clark news dropped, at least I saw it, literally about 4 minutes after I had just been reading a report that said Caitlin Clark might be worth $1 billion to the WNBA and to the city of Indiana in the 2025 season. Like she might be drawing or moving that kind of money with ticket prices, with television ratings that will increase advertising ratings, with just advertisers wanting to be a part of the Caitlin Clark effect in the WNBA, all of these different revenue streams that are going to get pumped into both the WNBA and the Indiana Fever, and then her pocket as well. I read something that said she could be moving $1 billion worth of stuff in 2025. And then you see this news that she is going to be out for at least 2 weeks. And that's more of an if. Like you hope it's only 2 weeks, but as tends to be the case with injuries that are non-contact and more, muscular related, you end up finding yourself in a little bit of trouble. Something doesn't heal the way that you want to. It's more with hamstrings, I think, than it is with quads, but it is worth at least pointing out that one of the main issues that stole a great superstar run potentially from Kawhi Leonard was a quad injury. Like they're very, very odd at times. And if you're the WNBA, you're like, dude, why our biggest player, our biggest draw is now going to be out for 2 weeks? How are we going to survive when it comes to staying in the mainstream of things, constantly being a topic of discussion in what is a point of the year where the WNBA should be, for all intensive purposes, at least with Caitlin Clark, dominating news cycles? Because the fact of the matter is, nationally, people don't really mess with baseball the way that they used to. And there's not a lot of massive national storylines outside of maybe some stuff with the Yankees and the Dodgers. But if you don't like those teams, you're not paying attention to those things. Now, we're Nats fans here in this part of town, so we've been paying attention to the Nats, but they don't move it the way that Caitlin Clark moves it. She is the biggest headline. The NBA Finals, Caitlin Clark's a bigger headline than the NBA Finals in most instances. Like maybe in New York because the Knicks are involved they care a little bit more about the Eastern Conference Finals than they do Caitlin Clark. But in every other market, like right now, if I were to poll everyone listening to the show, whether you're watching on YouTube, you're listening in your car, maybe you're listening on the Always Free and Live Odyssey app, if I'm going to poll everybody, odds are a lot more do you care about Caitlin Clark than you do the Eastern Conference Finals or the Western Conference Finals. There's a good subject to you that said, Denton, I'm so glad you're not talking about OKC and Minnesota anymore. I'd much rather hear about the health and the future of Caitlin Clark. She just has that kind of impact when it comes to moving the needle in sports at the moment. And now she is going to be gone. The Angel Reese Caitlin Clark dynamic, as toxic as it has tended to get in conversation, because people, for whatever reason, don't know how to handle these sorts of conversations, but that creates eyes on the WNBA. It puts attention on the WNBA, and for at least the next 2 weeks, they are going to have to figure out ways where they can get attention on them without her. How much can, or they're just going to try, and maybe this isn't the worst idea in the world, they're just going to try and stretch her as much as you possibly can without her actually stepping onto the floor. How can they concoct and navigate and create storylines involving Caitlin Clark that will make you interested in the WNBA without Caitlin Clark actually playing? The NBA has done a really good job of that over the years, by the way. I think much more people are interested in the NBA for the drama element of it than they are for the actual basketball game element of it. Everyone cared when Luka got traded. I don't know who cared about Luka debuting for the Los Angeles Lakers. That's partially because ESPN and the Lakers butchered that royally, and they readjusted schedules, and then Luka didn't debut, and people were angry, and it was this whole big thing. But that aside, like the drama is what really takes a sport in the WNBA that is trying to find its footing and take it to the next level. Maybe, just maybe, throwing out something here, Max, spitballing. I mean, Angel Reese has said on multiple occasions that Caitlin Clark is not the only reason that people watch the WNBA, that people watch for her too. Well, this would be a very good time for her to showcase that.
It would, but I don't know how many WNBA fans are interested in watching a layup, hit the rim, hit her hands, hit the rim again, hit her hands, hit the rim again, and then get kicked back out for a three to whoever.
Not great.
Not the best.
Not the best in the world. No, certainly not. You know what's crazy? So I was looking, and I'm in this part. I don't hate Angel Reese. Like some of the stuff it does feel very hateful towards Angel Reese.
Sure, absolutely.
I'm not trying to channel my inner Twitter milkman with old Bobby Three Sticks when I'm deciphering what is hate and what's not hate. I'm not trying to do that. But it does feel like there are some people that disproportionately dislike Angel Reese for things that might not be basketball related. Just an observation that I have had.
Absolutely.
So because of that, sometimes I kind of want to stick up for her. I know she's like kind of from the area. You know, it is one of those weird things where she's definitely more Baltimore, but because there are not a lot of WNBA players from the area, that we just decide that in the DMV, she's also kind of part of us, I guess, because she was technically at Maryland for like a year or two. So she decides, or we have decided that we are going to rep Angel Reese. It's really hard to stick up for her when you look at some of the stats, man.
It really is.
It's like really, really hard, because if you want to call her just like a missed layup and rebound merchant,
you wouldn't be wrong.
You're not wrong. I mean, I was looking, she is, for a career, now it's early in her career, but for a career, she is shooting 38% from the floor. That's atrocious. Not even considering the fact that all of her shots are coming from within like 4 feet of the rim, but shooting 38% from the field is somebody that's supposed to be a superstar.
It's tough.
That is not good at all. And it's very difficult to make up for. Be like, no, actually, I think she's getting a bad rap. She's not.
There's a lot of Linnell mainly, but a lot of people.
It's like all Linnell.
Well, yeah, but the reason I mentioned Linnell's name is because a lot of people last year weren't too thrilled with the fact that the Mystics passed on Angel Reese.
To be fair, I was one of those. I would like to see Angel Reese here.
But you know who they got in this year's draft? Who's having a much better season than Angel Reese right now?
I'm going to pull a Kevin Sheehan, the way he talks about hockey, and I'm going to need you to tell me that.
Kiki Ariafin. She has been cooking right now. She has like 4 double-doubles in like 5 games. She's shooting 50% from the field. And listen, I'm projecting that she will probably have a better career. than Angel.
Ooh, Linnell's not gonna like that one.
I listen. Hey,
I was
big
listening
Kiki Riefing guy here.
I was listening to his show. I think it was on Friday
Mhm.
when he was doing this show, and he was talking. You guys talk WNBA on Friday?
Yes, we did touch on the W.
You know what I was doing? I was going to get my car serviced, and then I got royally screwed by the car service people. I'll tell you that story in a second.
They do that.
Oh, I was furious. But I was listening to Linnell, and he was mentioning how great of a rebounder she is, and she is a great rebounder. But it's like having this conversation with Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark. You could have that same conversation with like Jordan and Rodman. Who are you going to pick?
Yeah.
You know, one is really good at rebounding and gives great defensive effort. The other one is the best player in the world, potentially. Now, Caitlin Clark's not the best player in the world. I still think that's A'ja Wilson at this moment in time because she is unbelievable. But Caitlin Clark is much closer to that conversation than she is the conversation of like Dennis Rodman.
For sure.
I also don't know if Dennis Rodman is a slight at Angel Reese or like lifting her up because Rodman was a Hall of Famer. He was a little wacky. So, like, I'm not trying to throw shade at her saying she's only Dennis Rodman. I mean, she's only an NBA Hall of Famer and one of the great defensive players of all time. That feels like it's not a shot at all. But the WNBA is going to have to figure out ways to strum up interest. Did you see this over the weekend, by the way? The Sparks were playing the Sky. I love the Sparks because I love Kelsey Plum. She's one of my favorite players in the WNBA.
I'm a Cam Brink guy, but
same thing, though. You know,
fair.
teammates.
I get it.
So Kelsey Plum went hard against Chicago. She had like 28-9 or something like that. But she had a play where she drives past Angel Reese, gets the layup, hits her with the too small.
Like a Heisman pose.
Hits her with the too small celebration. Now, if you don't know, Kelsey Plum is 5'8", Angel Reese is 6'3". She is very much not too small to defend Kelsey Plum, but what felt like the first like half of Caitlin Clark's career or the first half of her season last year where she was getting picked on, she was getting body checked, she was getting not bullied, bullying's not the right word, but the physicality was a thing and it felt like people were hunting her so they could be physical with her.
Welcome to the league.
Angel Reese is in that portion of her career right now. It feels like everybody across the league has garnered some sort of like massive respect for Caitlin Clark. Hey, you actually were really good. Probably should have been on Team USA. Got the fever to the postseason despite starting bad. You deserve your place in this league. And now everybody is turning the attention to Angel Reese. Notice they're not bullying Paige Beckers the way that they were with Caitlin Clark last year. They're turning the attention to Angel Reese and saying, if we're going to give you a little bit of the business, can you actually back it up? And so far, the answer is no right now. Maybe there's time. I don't know. Maybe there's time. So let me tell you this car story real quick. Because I was not happy about this. I am not going to name, just out of respect, because I am a respectful human being. I am not going to name the company that I was operating with or supposed to be operating with. But I will say I drive a certain brand of car. And that brand of car, it's a Mazda. Let me not say it like I'm driving a Porsche or something like that. But this brand, a Mazda does not have a lot of like big workshops around here. Yeah. So like I need my oil changed. I don't like going to like your general not car specific because one, I like to book appointments because I don't want to wait there all day. When I figured out you could book appointments, if you go to like a Mazda dealership or I had a Volvo before, a Volvo dealership, my life completely changed. And I would encourage everybody to do that. Not a lot of Mazda dealerships around. And there was one that's in Alexandria, which is where I am residing now. And I was like, I could go there, but they don't have an option until like 2 weeks from now. And I was like, I don't know if I can go 2 weeks. So I was looking for some other dealerships around where I live, found a Toyota dealership, went online, tried to book it. Toyota drop-down menu, what kind of car do you drive? Toyota or a Lexus? That's the only thing they work on. And I was like, dang it, don't drive either one of those cars. But it's fine because you told me online that was the only two cars you do business on. I go to the next one, about a half mile away, if that. Do the same whole process, hit the website, try to book a service, drop-down menu, Mazda's on the drop-down menu. I'm like, bet, this is sick. Book the thing, right? Now, I booked the thing for Thursday of last week. I then found out that I was going to do Kevin's show, this show, on Thursday of last week. Had to make an adjustment. So I call them up. They didn't have a change it online service, which is fine. I call them up, and I'm like, hey, I have this appointment for my Mazda tomorrow. Something came up at work. Do you have availability on Friday? And they say, yep, we can do your Mazda on Friday. Now, what I just said is important, Max, because I said what they said. We can do your Mazda on Friday. Mazda in the sentence. That's important.
Correct.
I get there on Friday. First of all, because of the area we live in, parking lot sucks.
It's
not their fault. Parking lot sucks. It's just not a well-designed parking lot. I go like a weird way because I don't know where to park. And then I somehow get stuck because there's no outlet in the back of the parking lot. So I'm like, all right, I got a 16-point turn out of here because everything's so tight. Eventually I park. I get in there. I go to the desk and I'm like, hey, got an appointment here for a Mazda. Guy at the desk says, hey, I was looking at your appointment. I was like, sick. That's good news. He's like, we don't do Mazdas here. And I was like,
You didn't tell me that.
I was like, it was on the website. It was on the phone call. If you realized that prior, you could have called me.
Yeah.
And been like, hey, we can't do your Mazda. Instead, I just 16-point turned in the back of the parking lot. I got to now walk out and find another place to get my oil changed. The parking lot where I actually parked, the portion of the parking lot where I actually parked, also not very open. So there's like two dudes out there that are like chain smoking cigarettes, watching me again 18-point park out of the back of this thing because there's no room to actually fully back out and get out of here. It was not a great day for your boy. But Linnell, I was listening to Linnell in the process. I will say, as much as I love Linnell, I don't know that he is the one that I want to be listening to, as I am also raging in the car.
Yeah.
Because like it's a combination of my rage and then he's raging. So like it's like like if rage goes Super Saiyan,
It reaches
that's kind of what I'm experiencing.
It's like a trampoline. You get that double bounce.
You get the double bounce. So the rage was very, very high. I still haven't got my oil changed, but I will sometime next week. All right. When we get back, news on the Commanders' name change. If you want the name to change, you are not going to like it. Don't go anywhere. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show with Denton Day on the Team 980.
All right, the Washington Commanders' final preseason game is set. They will take on the Baltimore Ravens in Landover at noon on August 23rd. That is a Saturday. The Commanders have also announced they are bringing back defensive tackle Carl Davis, likely to add a little bit more defensive depth before OTAs. Last night, the Hurricanes, they forced a Game 5. They won 3-0. Freddie Anderson turned around his recent struggles, saving 20 shots and earning the shutout. The Thunder, they go up 3-1 on the Timberwolves, 128-126. Shea with a 40 bomb, 9 rebounds and 10 assists. Jalen Williams finding his stroke, 6 of 9 from 3, nice, and notched 34 points in the win. Tonight, you get the Pacers taking on the Knicks. They get going at 8 p.m. on TNT. John Halliburton will be in attendance for the first time since his courtside confrontation with Giannis Antetokounmpo. And the Edmonton Oilers looking to go up 3-1 on the Dallas Stars. They get going tonight at 8 on ESPN. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980 and hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live from 10 to 1 and Craig Hoffman from 4 to 7. Don't forget to like the stream and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that's what's trending.
Big debate coming up in 10 minutes. Is lemonade a juice? We got a poll on Twitter at the Team 980. You can go vote on that. We'll take some of your phone calls as well if you're passionate about the subject. Is lemonade a juice? We'll go around the horn in our studio, get everybody involved here. So that's coming up in about 10 minutes. I've already gotten some very nice responses to this question on social media, and I think we have a lot more to get to on that topic when we get there. I'm going to get Linnell on this topic as well. So I'll need him in about 10 minutes. But first, Max sent me this. It comes from the Washington Post. If you love the name Commanders, you are in luck. If you do not like the name Commanders, I have terrible news for you. According to Nikki Javala, the Washington Post Scholar School Poll, or Washington Post SCAR School Poll, sorry. Don't know what this is, but this was a poll that says 61% of DC area sports fans are fans of the name Commanders, which is up 45% of area sports fans a year ago. Among all DC area residents, 53% say they are Commanders fans, while 45% do not root for the team. In 2023, 31% of DC area residents said they were Commanders fans and that the Commanders were their favorite local team. So why is this important? Because that means the tide is changing when it comes to the name itself. Now, I do have some degree of pushback here, if you don't mind, Max, before we get to the actual name itself here.
For sure.
I don't understand how these polls work without polling us. Were you asked about this?
No, but then again, I'm a Northern Virginia resident, not a DC resident. I know that Northern Virginia residents are included because there is a helpful little graphic that the Washington Post put in here. But yeah, how DC sports personalities, I feel like we need to be at least like
the
consulted.
Poll, I mean, this is what I would call a local poll. I wouldn't call it hyper local, but I would call it a local poll. So if you are from Northern Virginia, you should be added into this poll. If you are from Maryland, southern parts of Maryland, you should be added into the poll. If you're from Baltimore, I don't care. You should be in this poll.
Yeah, you're Ravens.
Go to the Baltimore Sun, right? But I feel like that should encompass everybody. It is local enough to where residents from everywhere should get it. Maybe they did an announcement about the poll. Maybe it was online. I don't know. I didn't see it. I would have liked to answer on this. It goes on to say later in the article that support for the Commanders' name has also shifted among the DC area sports fans. A 53% majority like or love the name. That is up from 34% a year ago. Among Commanders fans in the DC metro area, 62% have a positive view of the name. That is up from 36% last year. They then quote some people. Look, I don't really care about the quotes from people that I don't know. But the numbers I find to be interesting because we knew this was going to happen in some capacity. Now, I will admit, I don't love the name Commanders. I do like it more than I thought I would, but that's mostly because Jaden Daniels won.
Correct.
You could call them the Fighting Denton Days for all I care. If they're winning games.
I'm sure you'd love that.
I mean, I would hate that, actually. I don't need my face plastered everywhere. You could call them the Major Tutties for all I care, who, by the way, Major Tutty, he took the Zempies. He's a little bit more jacked nowadays. I don't know if you realize that.
We got to get Major Tutty undergoing like a big transformation. He needs to go through puberty is what I'm saying. He needs to get tusks, get a little bit meaner in the face.
He put some muscle on. I don't know if it was the Zempies or the roids, but he did one of the two. I saw
him and JD5 have bulked up in the offseason.
Hopefully JD5 is way more clean. But yes,
agreed.
I agree with you. But the name itself, as long as the team wins, I really don't care anymore. I'm done with the name conversation. I know Kevin's going to be upset that I'm saying this on his program with the microphone. I don't care as long as they win. When they started winning, the passion that had been relatively apathetic over the past couple of years was ignited. I felt like I was in middle school again. I felt like I was in high school again, caring about the team in ways that I had not done so in years prior. Now, part of that is because like when you're actually doing this, you do lose a little bit of the luster because it literally is like every day.
Yeah.
And man, let me tell you, during the Ron era and during the Jack Del Rio era, it sucked most days.
It's a grind.
There was not a lot of good days when it came to doing this every single day. But last year there was, and the name was kind of like, it was fine.
It was in the background.
It was whatever. If you're still tying that to Dan Snyder, I don't have anything that's going to convince you away from that, but I'm going to think of it more related to Jaden Daniels than it is to Dan Snyder. or to Jason Wright or to Will Misselbrook, whatever that dude's name is that was here for like a cup of coffee, made a bunch of big changes, and then left to flee out west. I don't care about none of them dudes. I care about Jaden Daniels. And if the Commanders are going to be what it is moving forward, then I'm fine with it. Now, if they change it, I'm fine with it too. Like, I'm not anti-changing it to something else. If when they get this new stadium and it's already started to be built, because I still think they're waiting on some of that stuff. Once they start to build the stadium and it's clear that, like, the stadium is going to be here, they have jumped over all of the legal hurdles, and they then decide we're going to change the name, I'm cool with that too.
Washington Warthogs, man. I'll say it on every program I'm on. Washington Warthogs. It's alliterative, pays homage to the old days. It's perfect.
Still keep the W.
Yes, you can still use the W. And like I said, meaning up Major Tuddy, he would be the perfect mascot.
He would be the perfect. He's already he ain't going nowhere.
Of course.
I think
Major Tuddy's here to stay.
The kids be loving old Major Tuddy.
So
he's not going anywhere, regardless of what the name ends up being. I want the colors back more than anything. I didn't love some of the colors that we saw this past year. I know a lot of you were in the same boat.
Didn't realize how much I'd miss those uniforms until we lost them.
They're beautiful.
They're clean.
They are beautiful. We're
crispy.
On YouTube. You can watch us on YouTube. George chimes in on the chat on YouTube saying, what is the age of Commanders voters? That is a great question.
It is a great question.
I would guess, just based off the way that the poll is done, it is going to be a more broad ranging age group. So it's not like they just went to 50-year-olds. It's not like they just went to 18-year-olds.
Yeah.
I don't know that the 18-year-olds know the Washington Post exists. Not a shot at the Washington Post, more a shot at the youth.
I also don't think they'd want to answer any questions from the media on something like this. I think they polled the number of participants is 1,667 DC area residents with a margin of error of 3.1 percentage points. That is the data.
I was not involved in that 1,600. I would like to be. I actually like poll questions. That's why we run them all the time on the show.
Yeah.
I'm a radio guy. I like poll questions. I would have loved to be in that. I don't think it's changing, at least for a couple years. But I was also, and maybe I would have to ask Ben Standing this, because I'm sure he would know better than I, and he'll join us at noon here on the Kevin Sheehan Show. I think you have to, there's a 5-year period where you cannot change your name again. It's something with like licensing in the NFL, because they start pumping out product immediately, that you have to wait a certain amount of years before you change your name again after you change it the first time. The reason why they could go from Washington Football Team to Commanders the first time was because of the circumstances that surrounded them changing the name from Redskins to Washington Football Team to Commanders. But because it is Commanders, I believe the process has to be at least a 5-year process. The Washington Football Team was just looked at as a transition period, a transition phase. They were progressive. It was a transition phase from the old name to what is now the Commanders. So I think we'd have to wait until at least, if it was started in 2022, we'd have to wait till at least 2027 before we get Commanders gone, if they decide to go that route. But people like it now, and they like it because the team is winning, and that's a nice problem to have. I don't think people would like it if the team went 2-15 or whatever last year. It's because they were fun to watch. You were going out to bars in December, January, and February, and you were watching meaningful, well, not February, maybe this year, but you were watching meaningful games with your team involved, and then the team happened to be stomping on opponents in the process of that, at least some of it, before they ran into the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFC Championship game. All right, coming up next, we get to the all-important debate. Is lemonade a juice? You can jump in on the phones, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. We have a Twitter poll question up on the topic as well at the Team 980. Is lemonade a juice? We'll go around the horn. Plus, we'll get into more actual football-related Commanders things when we get back. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show with Denton Day sitting in on the Team 980. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show. Denton Day sitting in for Kevin here. It is time to get into our poll question. When you think of the Kevin Sheehan Show, you think of hard-hitting Big J journalism.
That's right.
That's what you think of. Our poll question for the day is on Twitter at the Team 980, and the phone lines will open up if you want to jump in on this at 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. The poll question is, we got Linnell in here. He doesn't know the question yet.
Oh, boy.
So I'm actually excited to see what his reaction to this is going to be. Is lemonade a juice?
Are you kidding?
No, this is the
That's
real question.
Would you call it the Big J?
It's Big J journalism. Only important topics here on the Kevin Sheehan Show.
Is lemonade a juice?
Is lemonade a juice?
What constitutes a juice?
See, there's a lot of real thought into this.
And the debate is open.
Because this, to me, like, tired brains are going to ask you, is a hot dog a sandwich? Boring. Ain't nobody care about that. It's 2025. I know the Pope likes hot dogs because he's from Chicago. I don't care about hot dogs. Galaxy brain people, wired brain people are asking, is lemonade a juice?
Juice is any beverage not carbonated that's not water.
So milk is a juice?
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. See, like there's a lot of thought that goes into this.
So what is milk?
I'll give you my answer.
Milk is milk.
I do not think that lemonade is a juice.
Okay.
When Anthony McBarnett gets in here, we'll have this conversation because he threw this at me this weekend.
Of course. So this is where it comes from.
Yeah, it comes from
Of course, it comes from AMAC.
I do not think that lemonade is a juice. I think lemonade is a soft drink. I don't think it's a juice.
Soft drink. Let me
tell you why it's a juice, because now I have a definition for juice.
There we go.
Here we go. It comes from a fruit.
It does.
So that makes it a juice.
So that makes it a juice.
Yes.
That's your stance.
Yes.
Is that your stance too, Max?
No, my stance is it's lemon flavored sugar water.
It's
lemon. See, now he's thinking.
Yeah.
Because there's so much this is what was like the defining thing for me. Have you ever had packet lemonade?
Yeah,
right. Like you stir it up. It's very similar to Kool-Aid, right? Country Time, Simply Made, Minute Maid, whatever.
Sure.
Have you ever had that with orange juice or apple juice? No.
Okay, so I hear what you're saying.
But they do frozen concentrates for apple juice, orange juice, things like that. So you can go to the freezer section and get a lemonade, get an orange juice, get an apple juice concentrate.
So it's concentrate. I still think that because there is so much sugar involved and so much water in the basis of lemonade that it cannot be a juice. And another thing that I was thinking of, we got 4 people in here, right? Show's over, squad brunch. We're rolling to whatever the good brunch places are here in Southeast. Maybe we go to Arlington and Clarendon. They got all sorts of brunch places over there, right? We're getting mimosas, just the boys, the fellas, having some mimosas.
Yeah.
When the waiter comes over and offers you juices, he gives you orange juice, grapefruit juice, which by far is the best for mimosas, but that's another topic.
That's spicy.
Yeah, I love grapefruit juice. Maybe some pineapple juice.
Yeah, I like pineapple.
Pineapple juice for the ladies. Some cranberry juice, some apple juice. No one ever offers lemonade. Now, with that said, if you want to hit me with some lemonade and tequila,
well, there we
can have a time.
Yeah,
lemonade, vodka.
Lemonade.
There you go.
Vodka lemonade, but you're not getting it with mimosas. They give you juices with mimosas, not lemonade with mimosas.
I think both. I think Max kind of hit it. So technically, lemonade, once you put the aid on there, lemon juice is a juice that comes from the lemon.
Right.
Lemonade is a man-made drink.
It's man-made.
It's not
like you're not taking lemonade or lemon juice to the dome unless you're in a weird spot in life. If you're taking lemon juice to the dome,
you're doing something special for your health at that point.
I mean, right, exactly. Because I've had lemon water before, but when you throw in the abundance of sugar, I once was in charge. This is a real story, and it should not have been a real story, but it was. When I was like 15 years old, I worked at Cox Farms, which is like a little pumpkin patch. It was by far the worst job I've ever had.
I from an attendee at Cox Farms, I know.
Child labor laws being broken at this farm.
They did not have to pay me at 15 minimum wage as long as they gave me food.
Okay.
And let me tell you, I pimped that food system.
Oh, yeah.
I was getting 4 lunches. And at a certain point, they were like, you eat a lot. And I was like, if you're not giving me my $7.20, I'm taking multiple slices of pizza, you bastards. Yeah. But anyway, so I was going to be an alien on like the farm ride.
Yeah.
I got kicked out of that because a fight took place. I didn't fight, but I watched the fight and I didn't know what to do. And the police got involved. I couldn't do the alien thing anymore. So they made me do parking and they made me be at the lemonade stand, like deep into the farm. And they had me at 15 years old making some lemonade. The lemonade had to be awful. It was overly priced because I was making it at 15 years old. But there was so much sugar in it where I was like, this is not just lemon juice. This is lemonade, therefore it's not a juice. Video producer Brian. I don't know that Brian has been introduced properly on the show before, so this will be the time to properly introduce video producer Brian. He's been with us for like 5 months, 6 months now, something like that.
Yeah.
I think he tries to keep a low profile because I know what it is. He walks in every day. He's one of the fresher dudes in our building.
His sneaker game is crazy.
Goes just crazy.
Sneaker game is crazy.
But you can say all that, you can hype him up, and then he tells you he's a Cowboys fan. It's
He's
like
a Cowboy
meeting a fine
fan.
girl in the club, and then you find out her breath stinks. that is video producer Brian.
That is crazy.
Like it's amazing.
Well, it's funny because I asked him. I told Max we were going to do this, and I asked Brian. I was like, you want to jump on air with this?" He's like, "Hell yeah, I want to jump on air with this." So there's something there. Is lemonade a juice?
No, it is not.
No, it is not. So are we 3-1 right now?
Wow.
Well, I actually don't know.
Hold on, Brian. What did you say to me before the show?
I said lemonade is not a juice because the concept of lemon juice is a thing. So you wouldn't have to make that distinction if it was just a juice.
I think we're very quickly reaching a consensus.
Think about if you took a lemon and you just squeezed it. Are you drinking lemonade or are you drinking lemon juice?
Drinking lemon juice. You can make the same conversation with lime juice. That's why you have limeade and lemonade, but not lime juice and lemon juice.
It's like if you take an orange and squeeze the juice, that's just orange juice.
Mm-hmm.
That is orange juice. Now, there are, in fairness to like one of my points, there are a lot of companies out here that are going to put a bunch of extra processed stuff
absolutely.
in your orange juice, and we don't like that at all. But he is correct. So on the poll, 53% say no, lemonade is not a juice. And I think we're going to trust this poll a little bit more than the Commander's name poll. I think this is a much more like highly attested poll.
I was impressed by that poll because lemonade being a juice got off to a hot start.
I mean, it was like 70% from the jump. And I was like, whoa.
How long has this been up for?
It has been up for about an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hour and a half. So we're still getting there. You know, I ran one on Instagram as well. So I might have to throw in some of the Instagram votes.
I think it's a very nuanced conversation.
It is a very,
it is.
There's a lot of thought that goes into this. I can't wait. I'm going to have Chris Russell jump in on this when he gets in here.
He'll spend an hour on it.
And I can't wait.
Like he did Friday with the hot dogs.
He did spend an hour.
Whoa, what? Hold on.
Did Brian say something?
He spent legit an hour talking about hot dogs and what like the ideal hot dog is. And it stemmed from Metal Chris seeing like at the what racing event was this past week?
Oh, the Wiener at the Indy 500 they did the Oscar Mayer
the
Wienermobile race. Yes.
Wiener race.
The Wiener race.
Not a Wiener
the whole hot dog.
I thought it was the Weenie race.
Well,
okay. First of all, I kind of had a feeling Russell was a glizzy gobbler. I didn't know he was like spend an hour on hot dogs.
Holy hell.
We do have a call on this that I want to get to. You can join the conversation 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. John in Falls Church. Is lemonade a juice?
No, lemonade is not a juice. You guys have pretty much covered the points I was going to make, but like is a screwdriver a juice? It has orange juice and another set of ingredients, which happens to be vodka. Lemonade has lemon juice and another set of ingredients, which is sugar water.
Right.
And so it's like a non-alcoholic cocktail. And that's why I think on like those processed juices, they'll say like apple juice cocktail. And it's like apple juice, sugar, and water, as opposed to like apple juice.
It's like raw apple juice. Like I want that real apple juice. That's a great point, John. I'll tell you what, a screwdriver is not a juice, but it is a damn good time. Depending on who you are drinking it with. We got some people on Twitter chiming in. My guy Spencer says this is a trick question. All fruits, when squeezed, make juice. Would you drink 12 ounces of said squeezed fruit as a juice? Oranges, grapes, sure. Doing it with lemons would be a house of pain. That's a good way to describe that. It's not drank as juice, but as a drink because you need water, sugar, etc. So he says no. Mo says lemonade typically has lots of water and sugar added to it, like Kool-Aid. Lemonade is just a lemon-flavored drink. So we got a lot of people that are saying no, lemonade is not a juice. I feel proud. I feel like I've won some people over.
I think you did a great job.
I think I did a great job with that. We will still take some of the conversation on that if you would like to join in on that. It's up on Twitter, the poll question. We got a lot more people chiming in. My man Commander Jigga said no. He voted no because it's a juice. It's very high, 90%. for fruit and vegetable being used. I would think lemonade is probably around 10% fruit. Therefore, it is not a juice, but rather a lemon-flavored drink. So you want to chime in on that at the Denton Day on Twitter. Denton Day sitting in for Kevin Sheehan on the Kevin Sheehan Show. My guy George said, is coconut a fruit? Then what is coconut water?
Coconut
water is just coconut water.
Yeah.
It's like water produced in it. You're not squeezing the coconut.
Coconut's just a big seed.
Is it? I think it's technically a fruit. I don't know. I don't know what it is.
No, fruits would have seeds. Coconut doesn't have seeds. Coconut is the seed. You would plant a coconut and you get a coconut tree. That might be the dumbest thing I've ever said on air. If it's wrong. Only if it's wrong.
Can I Google that? Is coconut a fruit?
Coconuts are fruit. They come from trees.
But
yeah, coconut is a fruit.
Oh man. I just showed my ass and outed myself as an idiot on air. Oh no. What have I done?
And it comes for us all eventually, Max. Coconut water from like fresh coconut is pretty silly though.
It's delicious.
Yeah, I've had it. All right, we do got to get to some like actual football stuff. I promise this is not just going to be about all juices and lemonades, but if you do want to weigh in on that conversation, feel free to do so. So I saw something on social media this weekend. Again, it's Memorial Day weekend. Times are a little slower. Not a lot of big storylines going on outside of the Caitlin Clark injury, but even that almost felt like it flew under the radar just because of when that story broke over the weekend. But I did see a list that was put together of top 3 players on each team. This came from Pro Football Focus. I believe it was Trevor Sikkema. If not, it was one of the other guys at Pro Football Focus. But they went through each NFL team and they ranked the 3 best players. And for the Commanders, the 3 players were Jaden Daniels, Terry McLaurin, and Bobby Wagner. And in the description as to why Bobby Wagner was number 3 on here, it said Wagner added yet another elite run defense season. Gonna stop it right there. Didn't see a whole lot of elite run defense from anybody this year for the Commanders. While Bobby was good, I wouldn't say elite run defense. That was in fact like the biggest issue with the defense this entire season. But I'm just reading what Pro Football Focus said. I didn't say this. Said another elite run defense, earning a 91.2 grade, his 3rd straight year above 91. So I bring this conversation up because if you were to ask me who are the top 3 Commanders players, I would not have listed Bobby Wagner as number 3. I think there are a lot of different directions that you could go for that number 3 position. Maybe you think number 3 is Terry, and you would say somebody else is at number 2. I saw a lot of people on social media say, what about Laramie Tunsil? He's one of the best pass blocking left tackles in the NFL. He should be on this list over a guy like Bobby Wagner. And I did do the research everywhere else because I was curious if there was like some sort of caveat where you needed at least 2 offensive players and a defensive player, or you had to have defense represented in some way, shape, or form, the way that some of these things tend to be in the offseason during list season. And there was no caveat of that. There were certain players on this list that had all offensive players. There were a few teams on the list that had multiple defensive players. So they added Bobby Wagner on this list because they were clearly very passionate about Bobby Wagner being the 3rd best player on the Commanders roster looking into 2025. I would have said Frankie Louvu. I would have said that the answer is Frankie Louvu because of the versatility that Frankie Louvu brought to the defense from a pass rushing standpoint. And it felt like there were more points in time this season where Frankie Louvu showed signs of being a game wrecker. Now, the biggest issue with Washington's defense last season and the biggest issue with Washington's defense now, it's been my biggest gripe about how this offseason has ended up playing out. They have not added a legit game wrecker on defense. They are expecting somebody to step up and be a legitimate game wrecker, but they have not added a legitimate game wrecker on defense. And the standpoint of thinking that somebody is going to take a big jump, Dorrance Armstrong, Frankie Louvu, Javonte Jean-Baptiste. I mean, you take a defensive player and name one and say, I think this guy's going to take a big defensive jump. Fine. If they want to take that approach, I think it's a reasonable approach to take. I would have liked to see a little bit more on defense. With that said, though, I did feel like at times Frankie Louvu showed the most when it came to being a legitimate game wrecker because of that versatility, whereas Bobby Wagner was not that. He is not in a position of his career where he is in game wrecker mode anymore. He's played too long. He's getting up there in age. maybe losing a step and a half, a step or two, something along those lines. I think he's a great leader. I think he did elevate the defense, certainly. I would not call anyone on the run defense last year elite at playing the run. I would not do that. That was the biggest issue that came with last season. So I will say, as soon as I saw that in the blurb as to why this was the selection, I was hesitant to keep going and how much I wanted to trust this list because there was nothing elite about run defense last year. But that then leads the question to you, the listener. We are done with the lemonade conversation unless you have a take on it, which I think it's a fun conversation, and it's May in sports radio, so we have to have these fun conversations.
At least until AMAC gets in.
At least until, Anthony McBarnett gets in here, so we can get, although he did vote on my Instagram poll after he was the one that said lemonade is a juice. He did vote on my Instagram poll and said no.
What a turncoat.
I mean, he has done a 180, it seems, on his stance on lemonade.
Hey, listen, I
don't know if he thought I couldn't see those votes or what, but we might have to hold his feet to the fire.
I won't begrudge people from changing their mind, admitting they were wrong. That's growth.
It is very noble. I will tell you
it
that.
Is.
It's very noble. So we'll get his thoughts on that. But I want you to weigh in on the phones now with 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Who are the top three Commanders in the year 2025? You can look at this current roster, the names they have assembled. So if you want to throw Debo in there or Laramie Tunsil, you are perfectly okay to do that. Maybe you like Javon Kinlaw. That would be a hot take, but you are perfectly allowed to do that. I want your top three Commanders in 2025 at 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. We continue this conversation when we get back. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show with Denton Day sitting in for Kevin on the Team 980. is the Kevin Sheehan Show. Denton Day sitting in for Kevin at the Denton Day on Twitter. You can watch us on YouTube. If you have not followed the YouTube channel, be sure to go do that. Subscribe. You see the Kevin Sheehan Show. You see the Craig Hoffman Show. You might even see a little bit of Denton's Office on there throughout the course of the offseason. And always download the free and live Odyssey app. Our conversation right now, when we're going to open up the phone lines at 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980, who are the top three players on this Commanders roster? There was a list that was published over the weekend that ranked all the roster's top three players, all the top three players for each team in the NFL. And the listing for Washington had Jaden Daniels at number 1. That's relatively obvious. Terry McLaurin at number 2. I would say that one is also obvious. Maybe if he's not 2, he's at least on the list because there's no way he's not one of the top 3 players. And then number 3 on this particular list, according to Pro Football Focus, was Bobby Wagner. I do not agree with Bobby Wagner being on that list. I think Bobby Wagner had a great season last year. I think Bobby Wagner is a great player. But my top 3 would be Jaden Daniels, Terry McLaurin, and then I would put Frankie Louvu on there. It's a tough debate between Louvu, Laramie Tunsil, and then maybe Deebo Samuel. But I would lean with Frankie Louvu as the number 3 player on this roster. What say you? 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Before we get to calls, Max, do you have a top 3?
I do. Picking Louvu is a good pick because a lot of times, like when I'll use the Stanley Cup playoff run as an example, there were a lot of Commanders that came out. Like you saw all the quarterbacks there. Luke McCaffrey was there, and then for round 2 they had a sweep.
Yes,
and Josh Connerly was there, but there was one guy that made it solo to one of the games.
Mm-hmm.
Frank Louvu, chugged that beer. Many people remember. I will never forget. It was, and crowd loved it. So I think Frank Louvu is a great pick there. For my 1-2, easily, obviously, JD5, Terry McLaurin. But my third pick is this is a little bit of a projection for your boy. I think long-term, Mike Sainristil is the 3. Long-term. So like over the next, the next 5 to 10 years, Mike Sainristil will continue to be a face of this Commanders defense.
I don't think that's a terrible pick at all. I think Mikey Sainristil towards the end of the season was by far the best defensive back on the team. Easily. I think the gap between him and whoever you want to call number 2 was a very, very wide one. Whether you thought that was Marshawn Lattimore, although most people I'm sure would not because he was not getting rave reviews from the audience at the end of the season. So whether you thought that was Quan, Jeremy Chin,
Quan's another guy I'd throw in there too.
So my issue with Quan and not being in this conversation is that I don't feel like he is a big enough playmaker.
For sure.
I think he's very much a trusted guy to have in the back of a defensive secondary. But when it comes to making massive plays throughout the course of the season, I mean, he had that pick 6 in the Detroit game, caused me to lose some jewelry because I was dapping up fans at Honor Brew. That's full shoot. I dapped a dude up. My rings went flying. I asked the management, I was like, have you guys seen rings? And they're like, we have not, bro. I'm sorry. I was like, damn it. But he made that play. But I want to see a little bit more from that from Quan Martin. So I think that's my one issue, whereas it felt like Mikey not only was stepping up to like an A.J. Brown matchup and then kind of Mike Evans in the postseason at the end after Marshawn Lattimore said, this is not for me. I thought he did a really good job, though, of being a playmaker. So I actually love the Mikey Sainristil answer. I would put him in my honorable mention section, if you will, of that conversation. But I want your answer. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Who are your top 3 Commanders as we head in to the 2025 season? Let's go to Cam in Northeast. Cam, what's going on?
Hey, man, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Hope you are too.
Doing well. So mine's a little bit of a hot take. So obviously JD5 is number 1.
Mm-hmm.
I actually think for number 2, the conversation between Terry and Louvu is closer than you're making it, because you got to think Louvu's on the right side of 30. Terry's approaching the wrong side of 30 and plays a much more high impact position. So I'm actually tossing them up for 2. And then for number 3, here's my hot take. Assuming no injuries, he worked, stayed healthy this offseason, I'm putting Terry Biotish as number 3. If you remember from last year, all of our worst offensive games, the stinkers, And even in some of the games we won, like the Atlanta game where it was pretty much an offensive dud until the fourth quarter, those are all the games that Biadasz was in there. So granted, he's older. I get it. But I can't, I don't even feel comfortable putting Tunsil over Biadasz because granted, one of the best left tackles in the league, no question, but it's also on one of the worst offensive lines in the league last year with a quarterback of a similar skill set to what we have, right? So I'm not jury's out on Tunsil, but I'm not, salivating at getting a top 5 left tackle because he couldn't do it. And granted, I haven't watched film. I can't say whether or not he was the reason for Houston's troubles last year, but he was on, as a group, one of the worst offensive lines in the league. Like, he's not absolved from that. So, yeah, that's my hot take. Putting Biadasz as number 3, and then a toss-up between Luvu and Terry for 2.
Having Biadasz, that's a great call, Cam. I appreciate it. Having Biadasz there is not as much of a hot take as I think you think it is. I would not have him at 3, but I definitely have him on the list if you're looking at, like, if we were to make a top 10, he's very clearly on the top 5, and I think he'd be in conversation if we made a top 5 for that spot because of the reasons that you mentioned. I mean, that New Orleans game, it was so obvious how much Biadasz was missing. They were going up against the number 1 or the 32nd, I should say, but the number 1 bad defense against the run, the worst run defense in the NFL. And they couldn't do anything because they had Michael Dieter in there. And with respect to Michael Dieter, like, thanks for coming in. Thanks for jumping in. I wanted Biadasz in there as soon as humanly possible. After that game, they just could not get anything going on the ground. It felt like everybody was a little out of position. It felt like there were some free runners at Jaden at certain points of that game. And a lot of that was because of the leadership and the organization that I think Biadasz brings. So it is more than just what he does physically on the field. I think there's a mental aspect to that as well. You and I are in the same boat, though, when it comes to Laramie Tunsil. I am very excited about Laramie Tunsil, but I am not blindly excited. He was traded for a reason. He was traded for a reason from a team that has a young quarterback. So that does worry me a little bit. Why was he moved if he is this best left tackle in football? I think there are reasons to look at that and say, not a red flag, but there is at the very least a beige flag going on there. So I was like, I like the addition of Laramie Tunsil because it proves you are going to protect Jaden as much as humanly possible. But I don't know that he is the 3rd best player on this roster. And I don't know if he is just going to automatically come here and be awesome. There is a little bit of pushback, at least from me on that one. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Let's go to Jason and Laurel. Jason, what's going on?
Hey, Denton. Love the show. Nice to hear your voice again.
Appreciate it.
I agree with you. I don't think there's no way you can say Wagner is top 3. I would love if our defense was much improved or even middle of the road. But if we're going to make hay, we're going to make hay with the offense. So for me, it's Jaden, it's Terry, and I think the 3rd is Debo. And not only is I think he's going to help the passing game, he's on a contract, he wants some money, he seems to be in shape. But I think the thing that's going to really go maybe unnoticed right now, but really be hyper apparent to us all during the season, is Debo is going to improve our running game, not only from running, but as a blocker. He's probably our best blocking wide receiver we have right now. And the best thing we can do to help Jaden in our offense is run the ball more effectively. We had a lull in our offense last year. It was because our running game wasn't what it needed to be. So I think he's top 3 for that reason. The immediate impact he'll have on our overall offense, but it's specifically the running game.
Jason, I think it's a great call. Debo's impact on the run game is going to be felt very, very early, to the point where I am wondering how many carries he's going to end up taking away from running backs, plural, not just Brian Robinson. I know there's been a lot of conversation. I have added to that conversation about what Brian Robinson's future is going to be like in 2025. I don't know that he's going to be with this team past 2025. He should have been way better last year, and he wasn't. I don't know if that's specifically his fault, if that's an offensive line fault, and that's why they've addressed the offensive line in various different ways this offseason, but the running game was not what it needed to be. I do think that Debo Samuel is going to aid the run game. My only issue with Debo is that I almost don't know where to put him. You know, he's going to play wide receiver. He's going to be involved in the run game. There might be some confusion early on in the season about that being too much. Like, the luxury that he had with Kyle Shanahan's offense is that he knew that thing front, back, and sideways. So learning a new offense, how is he going to transition into that offense is going to be something that, at least right now, is my biggest question mark surrounding Debo Samuel. Now, Cliff showed us last year He's pretty good about this sort of stuff. And I am very much trusting Cliff to transition Debo into the offense very, very smoothly. But I would also like to see him play a little bit more wide receiver early in the season, just to open up that section of the offense and give Brian Robinson not like an ultimatum last shot kind of a deal, but just give him another opportunity. We're going to fully spread. No one's stacking the box. You got a run threat next to you in the shotgun with Jane Daniels, pistol, whatever formation they end up spending most of their time in 2025 through the first couple weeks of the season, and just see what Brian Robinson is able to do with that. See what Austin Eckler is able to do with that. And then eventually, if that is not up to par, if that's not up to snuff, if that's not up to what our expectations and the coaching staff's expectations are, then you start to put Debo Samuel into the offense a little bit more frequently. I think his upside for Debo might be the biggest upside of anyone that was added to this roster this offseason. There was times in previous years in San Francisco where when Debo was hurt, the offense was a shell of itself. His impact on what they were doing, this was early in the days of Brock Purdy, a little bit with Jimmy Garoppolo as well. When they lost Debo and they lost Trent for 2 games, it's like 2 games they lost both of them due to like nagging injuries. I think it was a hamstring for Debo, and it might have been a hamstring for Trent too. I don't remember. That offense was a shell of itself because they didn't have any other threats. So Debo immediately puts a threat into the heart of the defense when you put a playmaker with him. So I think you're going to see him on the field a lot. I do wonder what he's going to end up doing as it relates to Brian Robinson and getting the bulk of the carries, or at least more than 150. If Debo gets more than 150 carries, there's a 0% chance that Brian Robinson is on the roster next year, and then he has probably at that point been relegated to running back 2 or 3 at this point in the season. If he's getting that, if Debo's getting that magnitude of carries. Couple answers in the YouTube chat. If you're not watching us on YouTube, we are available each and every day on YouTube at the team 980. My guy Marcus says it's Luvu, it's Jaden, and it's Terry. Very smart. Said the same thing, Marcus. But I do think those are the 3 best. I did love Max's Mikey Sanders still. I liked the addition of Biotish. I thought Biotish was the unsung hero of last year's team. In fact, when we were doing segments about that at the end of the regular season, I felt like Biotish was almost the consensus for unsung hero. It was either Biotish or Zach Ertz, because Zach Ertz kind of came out of nowhere. We thought he was going to be like a 20 catches in it at the tight end spot and just hope that he was going to bring Ben Sinnott up by the wayside with him, and then he ended up being one of the favorite targets for Jaden Daniels. I'm very glad, I will say, that nobody has mentioned Zach Ertz for the 3rd best player. I don't want him to be the 3rd best player. That's one of the reasons why I don't want Bobby Wagner to be the 3rd best player. It has to be younger. It has to be a guy that is a little bit younger. That's just my way of thinking about things. Although someone did say that Terry is, on the wrong side of 30. When did 30 just become this massively old age for positions not named running back? For a running back, I get it, because you're taking, 400 hits during the course of a season. By the time you do that at 30 years old, you've accumulated, quick math here, upwards of 2,000 hits at the NFL level, not even considering what took place in college. But 30 at wide receiver is not all that old. If you're a good route runner, you can play this game until you're 35, 36, 37 years old. So I don't think that Terry getting it close to 30 makes him old all of a sudden. I still think there's at least 4 or 5 really good years in there for Terry McLaurin. Pro Bowl years, certainly, maybe a couple of all-pro years in there now that, again, he has a quarterback like Jaden Daniels, and I think his production is only going to be a lot easier this year with Debo Samuel and having wide receivers around the offense that are more than what they had on the team last year. Let's go to Chris in Damascus. Chris, you are on the Kevin Sheehan Show. Chris, what's going on?
Then I just wanted to say it's nice to hear you back on the station. And and I do catch you when on MGM. Whenever I hear your voice, then I tune in.
Chris, who's your 3rd favorite player on the team? Who's the 3rd best player on the team?
That's what I was. First of all, it's got to be. I think it's got to be.
You said a lineman came to your mind. You said that's who it was going to be. You got any linemen you like?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be Payne or
Ooh, other side of the ball.
I mean,
Okay.
Chris, I appreciate the call. I hope it's Deron Payne. If it's
I
Deron
pray
Payne,
to
that means
God.
something is going really, really well.
Awesome. Another guy that we haven't mentioned on third commanders, and I think a lot of this is because of the injury, but Sam Cosmi is.
Cosmi's a great pick.
Yeah,
like Cosmi's a great pick
because he was. When you look at like all the long tenured guys, it's him and it's Terry.
Yeah, Cosmi's a great pick. He had a great season last year. The injury came at a terrible time,
The
especially
worst
considering
possible time.
Who you were playing in the NFC Championship game with the way that Philadelphia defense is built up. But on top of that, I think having Cosmi on the roster now with Brandon Coleman having flexibility to play guard, potentially playing left guard, Tunsil at left tackle, and then Josh Connerly at right tackle with Biotic at center. That's like a dream at offensive line.
At AP's cooking.
I mean, that's a dream at offensive line. Guys can play the run. Guys can play the pass. You got a couple of all-pro candidates on that offensive line. Like, that's a lot better than – it's certainly a lot better than some of the offensive line that we have been forced to sit through over the years. We'll continue this conversation at 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Who are your top three commanders heading into the 2025 season? We will answer that. Ben Standing going to join us in about 20 minutes here on the Kevin Sheehan Show. It is the Kevin Sheehan Show with Denton Day sitting in on the Team 980.
All right, the Washington Commanders have announced that they are bringing back 10-year vet defensive tackle Carl Davis to add to the roster before OTAs, likely to add depth. The Commanders have also announced their final preseason game is set. They will take on the Baltimore Ravens in Landover at noon on Saturday, August 23rd. Last night, the Hurricanes, they forced Game 5. They win 3-0. Freddie Anderson turns around his recent struggles and earns the shutout. The Thunder go up 3-1 on the Minnesota Timberwolves, 128-126. Shea with 40 points, 9 rebounds, 10 assists. Jalen Williams finding his stroke, 6 of 9 from 3. He notched 34 points in the win. Tonight, you got the Pacers. They're taking on the Knicks. They get going at 8 p.m. on TNT. John Halliburton will be in attendance for the first time since his courtside confrontation with Giannis Antetokounmpo. And the Edmonton Oilers look to take a 3-1 lead over the Dallas Stars tonight at 8 on ESPN. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live from 10 to 1 and Craig Hoffman from 4 to 7. Don't forget to like the stream and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that's what's trending.
is the Kevin Sheehan Show. Denton Day sitting in for Kevin on a Tuesday. He will be back next week. He got this entire week off. It'll be Linnell tomorrow, and I'm with you on Thursday and Friday. We're talking about top commanders. There's a list of the top 3 commanders. Bobby Wagner was number 3 on that list behind Terry and Jaden. I think if you ask most people, and most of the people that have chimed in on this, they have Terry and Jaden at 1 and 2, and then there's a conversation for number 3. I said it was Frankie Louvu. This list had Bobby Wagner. Max said Mikey Sanders still. We had a call about Debo. We had a call about Biotish. No one has said Laramie Tunsil yet, at least not on this program. I think that is in part due to the fact that there are still some question marks just about what we are going to see from Laramie Tunsil, what Washington is getting in Laramie Tunsil. Great at defending the pass, question marks at defending the run, and then you also have to dive a little bit deeper into that and say, why was he traded? If he was as good as people are telling us, like, it is almost a little worrisome to me when I watch videos on the social medias of various, big name shows.
Yeah.
And I understand how this works in May. I work in the business. I get like the theory and the formula here. It's list season. You're making some lists. People are jumping in on these on-off seasons, right? But it does make me almost a little nervous when everyone says that Washington has had the best off season. I think they've had a good off season. I don't think they've had the best off season, and in part because I just don't know what Laramie Tunsil is going to be in the long term. He has worn out his welcome everywhere that he has been so far. And again, they had a quarterback that had a problem getting sacked too much, who was a year older than Jaden Daniels. Everybody compared Jaden Daniels to said quarterback and CJ Stroud, and now he's here. I like what they're doing, building the offensive line, but I do think it's fair to look at that and say I'm a little nervous.
For sure. I think a big thing about why Tunsil was traded was they were looking for a little bit more leadership on the offensive line group in Houston. So that's kind of why they did this little reshuffle. And I think coming to Washington, you don't really have to worry about that as much because you have guys who have already been here, like Biotish, who is now established. You have Cosme, then you've got a couple other guys deep down the line who I just don't think are going to what's the word? I'm like taking slack if there is any that will get checked rather quickly. At least I would hope. Now, how Laramie responds is up to Laramie, but
because the thing that this offseason has been very, very apparent, and this was apparent in the way that they drafted, they want commanders.
Yep.
Whatever that means to them, it's not like we have a blueprint on what exactly that is. We don't have a checklist to say, all right, this person checks this box. Oh, they don't check this box. Therefore, they are not a commander. So we have an idea.
You know it when you see it.
You know it when you see it. It's the X factor, which is kind of annoying because sometimes I would like an idea.
For sure.
But they have said this the entire offseason, and yet they still went after Laramie Tunsil. I have not been given a reason to not trust the front office and the brass, the decision makers. So I trust them in that regard, that they see something in Laramie Tunsil that they believe can be flourished here and turn him into a really good player. My problem with that line of thinking, though, Max, I can critique my own argument. I don't know how much they got to talk to him before they traded for him.
Yeah, it is a big question.
I don't know how much communication is legally allowed or even under the table. Like, I'm not.
Yeah, like passing things through agents,
you know what I mean?
And stuff like that.
Exactly. Talking to a coach, talking to somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody. I just don't know what the communication was. If he ends up being a baller, trust me, I'm thrilled. Like, I don't think he can't be that, but I think it's fair to look at that and say I have questions. And that would be the reason why I did not have him at 3 in my top 3. But I think your leadership point is a good one, that there are going to be guys on this roster that already have the leadership element of the game accounted for.
Yeah.
Or at least on a week in, week out basis. Something I found interesting on social media this weekend, It was a tweet from the 33rd team, very heavy analytics driven. I think they do a really good job with a lot of these things. And they were breaking down the receiver route tree. And they did it in a way that had the 2024 receiving yard leaders by each route type. So you see a lot of very familiar faces. Slant routes, the best receiver running slant routes in terms of yards was A.J. Brown at 219 yards. Deep in routes was Amon-Ra St. Brown. That's like the only thing that he runs in Detroit. They love like a good 10-yard in with Amon-Ra St. Brown. Crossing routes was Marvin Harrison. Hitch and comeback routes was Jamar Chase. Out routes was Jamar Chase. I mean, how many times did you see Jamar Chase run like a hitch or a comeback or an out route and then spin to the sideline, make a defender completely miss, and then he's going 60 yards the opposite way? Why I bring this up, because at the go routes position, the top receiver in terms of yardage when running a go route was Terry McLaurin at 384 yards and had 6 touchdowns on what would be considered go balls. Now, we obviously remember the one from the Cincinnati game where he won the game, go route, boom, right up the field.
Mm-hmm.
You could consider that second Philadelphia. Like I was in my mind, Max, trying to figure out like all the touchdowns that he ran on go routes.
Yeah.
Like cycling through all 14 of them that he had this year. The one against Philadelphia where he beat Quinyon Mitchell in the second game of the 3, that would be considered a go ball touchdown. So that's 2 of them right there.
Mm-hmm.
My guess is that based on the way this is being laid out, that the touchdown late in that first Dallas game was considered a go route just based off where that was run. Now, that was kind of like it almost feels like not a go route because he was splitting the defense because Dallas was in like this really deep zone.
Yeah.
But that would have been considered a go route. So 6 touchdowns on go routes. I'm not going to go through literally all 6 of them as we sit here right now, but 6 on go routes and 384 yards. I'm going to be very curious as to how that changes in 2024, either for the better in terms of those yardage markers, or maybe for the worse if they decide to put somebody like a Jalen Lane, who they drafted out of Virginia Tech, in the position where he is going to be the go ball guy. This is also the reason why they did not bring back De'Ami Brown. De'Ami Brown in 2024, his job was to do one thing. It was to go down the field fast. And he did it against Cleveland, and he did it at certain times in the postseason. All of that was great. Thank you, De'Ami Brown. Appreciate it. But on a consistent basis, it was clearly Terry McLaurin that was the deep threat. So you're not bringing back a guy like De'Ami Brown if the thing that he's supposed to be doing well was being done well by somebody else on the roster. But I think the objective is going to be, at least in 2025, is to not make Terry your priority deep ball guy, to utilize a little bit more of his route tree, because I think he has a great route tree. He can do a bunch of different things. He can run across the field. He can good on the slants, deep ins. Like a lot of these routes, post routes, your in routes, your crossers, your hitches, your comebacks. I think Terry can do a lot of those routes really, really well at a very, very high level. Now, the hitch and the comeback is going to be reserved for Noah Brown. Noah Brown and Jane Daniels, before Noah Brown got hurt, Noah Brown loved a comeback route. And Jane Daniels loved throwing to Noah Brown on a comeback route. But the screens, I think Terry showed that he could be really good in screens. We saw that against Detroit. Kind of saw that against Philadelphia at various points in the 3 games against them. He's a tough guy to tackle when he's in open space. He can kind of barrel over you. He has a lot of strength in that regard. So I'm going to be interested to see. If you would have told me, Max, that Terry McLaurin is going to be on this list for receiving yard leaders by route type, I would have thought that he would be on the list. I would not have been able to tell you that he would be on this list for go routes. I would have thought it would have been something a little different, like maybe the out routes, because he runs a good out route. I would have thought it would be either out routes or maybe the screens. I am stunned that the screens, this must not count postseason, but I am stunned at the screen. Yeah, because the screen is James Conner, who had 219 yards. Now, if this is counting the postseason, well, Terry had a 66-yarder against Detroit. That itself, without another 17, 18, 19 games on the docket, I'm sure he would have had more than 219 if you consider playoffs into this. But, not all of these teams made it to the playoffs. Most of them did, but not all of these teams made it to the playoffs.
My favorite leader on this list is Kyle Pitts on corner routes. It's shocking that he's
about time he led in something.
Right? Finally. Damn.
I mean, we've only thought that he was going to be really, really good in this league for a very, very long time. At least I did, because I watched this guy.
Denton.
This has been the year for 6 years, man.
Listen, people have been waiting for Kyle Pitts to be good as long as you and I have been waiting for Luke McCaffrey to score a touchdown.
Pretty much.
By the way, Jalen Lane will be taking that seat this upcoming season.
Yeah, I don't know who I'm going to start betting. I need to
Jalen
see
Lane's my guy. I've staked my flag.
I need to see the final roster. I need to see the preseason.
Yeah,
because the addition of Wes Welker did make me want to lean Luke McCaffrey again.
I get it. I understand.
Not hard math to do on that one, but I need to see the roster and how everybody plays in the preseason. All right, coming up next, Ben Standy going to join us. OTAs in action to get the latest on Terry McLaurin and his contract. Ben Standing on the other side. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show with Denton Day on the Team 980. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show on the Team 980. Denton Day sitting in for Kevin at the Denton Day on Twitter. If you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, please go do so. You get to see the Kevin Sheehan Show live, so you see me in living audio and color on the YouTube. Subscribe to that. We go to the phones now. Our guy Ben Standig with us. Normally he joins Mondays and Fridays, but because everybody was off yesterday, we have twisted his arm, and he is good enough to join us on Tuesday. Ben, we appreciate you jumping on. Before we get to Commanders discussion, and I'm sure Max has tipped you off about this, our topic of discussion that has been a debate on the show today, is lemonade a juice? Do you have a response to this?
Wow, starting off with the heavy stuff here.
Hard-hitting journalism only.
I mean, maybe it's just because I'm used to it not being classified as one. I'm going to say no. And I'm going to say no. I mean, I know that the apple and orange and all that have like sugar added to it or whatever, but like the taste feels, fairly like pure and direct.
So my counter argument to that, or to that point where you put sugar in juice, you're not cutting any of those juices with water. You know what I'm saying? Since lemonade is primarily lemon juice, a good portion of water, and then sugar. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I would say it is not a juice. That would be my stance. Final answer.
That has been the correct answer for a majority of those of us on the show. So that you are in a safe place with that.
Ben's on the right side of history.
All right. So there's a couple not big Commanders news, but a couple of news tidbits today. I want to start with Carl Davis. They bring him back at the defensive tackle spot. Is there much to this, or is this just another body at D tackle?
I just think it's another body until we hear otherwise. I mean, he's a guy that's been around the league. He was one of the players that filled in last year when they had some injuries, Jonathan Allen and others. And if you had told me they had re-signed him, a couple months ago, I'd have been like, sure. I mean, my only wonder is like, if you look at the defensive line, I know everybody's lamenting that they haven't done enough at defensive end and so on, but like they actually have like a lot of bodies. If we're going to say can you make the 53 roster out of these guys? So I don't like, typically if somebody's going to sign you, who's played a bit, you think, okay, there's got to be sort of a semi-obvious path to make the team. I don't really see one for him, but again, long way to go. Injuries happen. Who knows what their ultimate plans are with a couple of players. So yeah, I think it's just depth at a minimum for the summer. And again, it's somebody who's been around, and maybe they put him on the practice squad when the time comes, to have that veteran presence in case they need it.
Will he be at OTAs this week?
I would assume so if you're announcing it today. I mean, again, to the point of how come they haven't signed Matthew Judon or, one of these vets that's still out there. It's because those guys don't want to be part of OTAs and minicamp. I mean, unless the team is coming at them with like a legit offer, like a real, more than the sort of the baseline offers that are out there, they don't want any part of this stuff. Whereas a guy like Davis, I would imagine, hey, he's happy to get a call. So yeah, I presume he would be there this week.
Is that, do you think, one of the reasons why Terry McLaurin has been absent the past couple of days from OTAs?
It could be. I mean, it could be a lot of reasons why he's out. I think in this town, even going back before this group, we have made such a big deal about who shows up for OTAs and all these things, which again are voluntary, in large part because the percentage of players that come is very, very high typically. But I was looking around, like one of a reporter I follow on social media covers Tampa Bay, and he was saying that I guess they're at practicing today, that like they have like maybe 75 players there, and he was noting like some of the notable players that were in attendance, and it didn't sound like a lot of it wasn't like Mike Evans. I don't know if Mike Evans is there or not, but he didn't list him when saying here are some of the names that are here. So I think, and I know the Ravens are kind of the same way. Like, I think a lot of teams it's not nearly a stigma to be like, hey, this guy's not around. Whereas here, and granted, we understand with Terry, there's something else going on in terms of a contract discussion, and maybe that is part of something. But I don't think it's a big deal with McLaurin for whatever the reason he's not here. I'm kind of the mindset, wake me up when we get to training camp if he still doesn't have a deal. But other than that, I imagine something will get done. And if he's not there, God bless him. It's not, it's not some major red flag. It certainly wouldn't be in a lot of teams around the league.
I was going to ask you when the benchmark is, because I'm not worried about Terry not being at OTAs. Doesn't really bother me. We've kind of seen this before. I mean, he was there earlier. He was throwing with Jaden. We get the feeling he wants to be here. We get the feeling the team wants him here. The rest feels like semantics. But if we do get to training camp and there is no deal, is it then time to move the panic meter at least a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, if you get all the way that deep and nothing's happened, that would be something to note. I mean, even still, he's. I'm not really worrying about it. I guess on any level. I mean, like they what have we heard? What's like the one refrain we've heard a lot in the last recent weeks and months? That Dan Quinn and Adam Peters now know what it means to be a commander. They have identified commanders. It's a talking point that people, even on the business side of things, mention when it comes to this team. Well, if you're going to put somebody on the poster for what it means to be a commander, how is it not Terry McLaurin? Not only is he highly productive, but a role model, a locker room leader, does all the right things. Great in the community. Like everything about it screams. This guy is a player you want to position as somebody to follow. And then on top of that, the biggest thing this team has done this offseason is continue to build around Jaden Daniels, right? Offensive line, Deebo Samuel, et cetera. And granted, McLaurin has a contract for this year, but why would you not that's building around Jaden Daniels. To take him away or to potentially have it such that he could walk after the year, that would go against the plan. So I would, I'm not fretting at all about this not getting done. But yeah, sure. I mean, we live in a world of business and commerce, and at some point something has to get done. But again, wake me up at training camp if nothing's happened yet.
We were talking with Ben Standig here on the Kevin Sheehan Show, with Denton sitting in for Kevin here on the Team 980. Now, the team did announce its preseason schedule, and I'm not like a schedule connoisseur of any kind, Ben. I didn't do a mock preseason schedule, none of that. But I do find it odd that they have week 1 and 2 of the preseason 10 days away, and then week 2 and 3 of the preseason 5 days away. That seems weird.
Yeah, I think, again, as much as I'm going to get the outrage over a preseason schedule, it does feel like Washington got hosed here. Not only are the second game is a Monday night, which really, come on, NFL, you have to put them on Monday night. You have them on every other national television game. It's Monday night football in the preseason. Calm down. But then, it's a literal night game, as we know, right? So that's Monday. And then 5 days later on the calendar, but really less than that, because it's a Monday night game, and then the next game is a noon kickoff. They're playing again. Now, even if we assume that the Jaden Daniels and the other starters and main players won't play a lick, what about it still sucks for everybody else. This is the last game to try to make the team, to show what you're doing. And now you have to do it on short rest when at a point where it's never good, but you're only just sort of getting used to hitting guys again. It's a complete. I think they got completely hosed here on this on both fronts. I think it's a pretty lousy situation. I also think, I don't know that anything would have happened for sure, but I know there was at least some thought of hey, could we do joint practices with the Ravens? Like they have in the past, it would make sense. Well, you can't do it now. I mean, not with only that short time. So that's another potential thing they got hosed on, that even if they truly wanted to have that, it was impossible to do it.
That was going to be something I brought up. One, I mean, this is the NFL once again showing us that safety is a top priority with the 4.5 days basically, but that eliminates the Ravens as a potential joint practice. Have you heard any conversations? I know, at least I believe, that Vrabel and Dan Quinn have some sort of relationship. Could there be a joint practice with New England?
Yeah, I think the Patriots, I think you can look for that to occur. I think that one is, you can probably pencil in at least for sure. So yeah, they will have at least one, I believe. But yeah, I mean, the schedule just doesn't lend itself to having another one. And the Ravens one, I mean, obviously maybe you can't do it every single year for whatever the reasons, but like that's just such a no-brainer, right? For both sides, it's minimal travel, all that, and yet now it gets now you can't because of the calendar, even if you wanted to. So yeah, and that's a tough blow there. I mean, it's clear that Dan Quinn, as a lot of coaches do, likes the joint practices, and I think we all understand why. So yeah, like at least they're going to do the one, but it's at the top of the preseason. Maybe it'd be a little bit better to have a little bit later, but at least they're going to get the one in. It looks like.
Talking with Ben Standing of The Athletic here on the Kevin Sheehan Show, with Denton Day sitting in for Kevin here on a Tuesday on the Team 980. Are there any storylines in particular that have your interest as we approach OTAs outside of Terry McLaurin's contract status?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's not so much about the X's and the O's, and it's more just about the individual players, who's healthy, who looks like they have been putting on some bulk, some weight, or possibly the opposite. I think those are the things that I'm most interested in. And I think I can't get too worked up about where people are lining up, who's on first team, second team. But the offensive line will be kind of an interesting look. Does Josh Connerly start to get the reps with the first unit? Where does Brandon Coleman line up? I think that to me is going to be interesting. And again, I would probably just say is Marshawn Lattimore going full speed? A guy who missed a bunch of time last year, not just last year, but several years in a row with hamstring injuries. Where is he at now? I'm not saying you give him a pass off of last year after the trade, but okay, you can maybe give him a little bit of a pass. He was dealing with an injury when they got him, et cetera. But now, it's months away. You should be out there all the time. Hopefully he's not getting days off or anything along those lines. That would be a bit of a red flag. So to me, it's just mostly things along those lines. And I think the other part for me would be, what's the vibe? It's always positive at this time of year. It's like, spring training in baseball. But last year there was a little extra. You could tell, at least I could, that the holdover players had an extra pep in their step being around Dan Quinn and the new vibe. And not that you would expect anything different, but what's the vibe this year? It seems like everybody's still in a good spirit, good mood. I don't get any sense of anybody coming in with a big head or anything like that. But let's just see what are people saying. What's the tone, et cetera? Because that can be the sort of an underlying sense of how this team is operating. But those are the types of things I'm going to focus on more than say, wow, the defense, the run defense looks much improved. I mean, there's no pads. You can't tell anything for real at this time of the year. So that's kind of what I'd be paying attention to.
How much, if any, danger is Luke McCaffrey and in losing his either return spot or what few snaps he did get last year to Jalen Lane?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible. I mean, he was pretty effective returning kicks late in the year, so I would think he would at a minimum be still part of that. And then as far as the receiver rotation, after Terry McLaurin, Deebo Samuel, and probably Noah Brown, I think it seems pretty open. Like Jalen Lane, because of that speed, it feels like there would be a specific opportunity for him, a specific role. But I'm not going to rule out Luke McCaffrey. If he takes a leap, last year was only his third year as a receiver because he switched in college from quarterback. So he's still learning the position. And, I saw times last year was he felt like he was on the verge of a breakout a lot of weeks, and then it just never quite happened. So he's definitely one of those guys I'm curious to see, how does he come into camp? Does he look a bit, sharper with what he's asked to do out there? So, look, you can't play everybody. And, if you want to include Michael Gallup or KJ Osborne, perhaps, as guys who could also force their way into the rotation, sure. But, I think McCaffrey's going to get every chance to be able to have a role. But, we'll see. Again, with Jalen Lane, they're different types of players, but there's only so many snaps to go around. So let's see how that goes. But I think I think he has at least a good chance to stay where he was last year, if not get a little more work.
Basketball question here for you. Can anybody beat the Thunder?
Oh boy. So I think like what was impressive to me about last night, like I have not been like all in on the Thunder the way a lot of people have been. Now, admittedly, I didn't watch a ton of Thunder games during the year, and the record was obviously very impressive. But I've been concerned about their youth. Like they don't have. I mean, obviously SGA is a hell of a player, and they have a lot of talent. But you saw like in the Denver series how Denver was able to, I think, sort of take the maturity angle that they have as guys who won a title and use that to their advantage. I thought last night was impressive for the Thunder. They seemed to come out from the jump and not only not be afraid of the moment, but be really engaged. And they were Minnesota was facing an uphill battle all game. I think though that both the Knicks and Indiana, whichever one comes out of the East, both of them have a lot of resolve. They're both, I think, pretty. They play with a lot of energy and effort, and I think that's the type of team that could potentially get the Thunder. But and Indiana also has a lot of depth, which is Oklahoma City's real strength, along with their defense. Like they just can throw body after body. So I think Indiana would have a shot, and I think the Knicks wouldn't be crazy to me either. But certainly the Thunder, they just have so much talent, so many bodies, and with SGA, if he keeps making shots, that obviously going to be a very tough out.
Do you think the Knicks tie the series up tonight? I kind of take a lot of joy in watching them lose, so I was a little upset that they came back in Game 3.
Yeah, we've seen an inordinate amount of these 20-point leads disappearing, and in a lot of cases, I think it's fair to use the choke word. I wouldn't do that in this last game. I mean, Indiana's offense wasn't at nearly as good as it had been in the first two games. But I just thought the Knicks, that right before the first half when they cut it from 20 to 13 was a big stretch. And then, Karl Anthony Towns had a monster fourth quarter, and their defense was tremendous, the Knicks. And that's the thing, we always talk about the offense of the NBA, but between the Knicks, the Pacers, the Thunder, we got some of the really impressive defensive teams here. And, I think Indiana wins tonight. I think they take that 3-1 lead. But if the Knicks defense shows up like it did from the start, then we very much could be looking at a 2-2 series. But I think Indiana finds a way to get it done.
Are you a Timothée Chalamet fan the way that I am now? I'm not like a huge fan of his movies just because I'm not a big movie guy, but it feels like this guy's living my 12-year-old dream.
Well, I mean, he's certainly doing well for himself. If you had to pick the heir to the Leonardo DiCaprio, star in big movies, date attractive women, and just although he's taking it to a different level, whereas DiCaprio is completely hides himself off screen. Chalamet out in front with the Knicks fan base, to the point where he's getting dragged out of his car after they won the previous series against the Celtics. Yeah, he's definitely taken advantage of it all, and I respect it. I mean, I know he grew up in New York. Obviously, I have no idea what kind of fan he truly was, but he seems like a fairly normal person in this regard. It doesn't feel like we see some celebrities you're like, are you really a fan? Or are you just kind of putting on the sweatshirt and saying you are? In this case, it feels like authentic. So he's having a great time, and kudos to him.
He was a total blog boy. The people have gone back because how the internet is, how it is. They found him on message boards when he was 13 years old.
He rushed down to Grand Central Station for tickets to meet Landry Fields and Andy Routens. So that'd
be like me rushing to meet Jarvis Hayes.
Yeah.
that's why though. That's great. I mean, like I said, the authenticity with this stuff is what's key. It's there's nothing worse than fake fans that celebrities that try to show up at when the team gets good. Be curious to see what happens here, for example, with the Jaden Daniels. People McConaughey. They're already in. Dale Jr. We knew they were fans when the team was terrible. So let's see if who possibly shows up now. But no, yeah, that's great if he's that into it. I mean, I certainly, as somebody who's been into these things my whole life, it's great to see other people have that sickness, and good for him.
Ben, we appreciate it. We started you with a lemonade conversation. We ended you with Timmy Chalamet. Hard-hitting journalism only here on the Kevin Sheehan Show, but we appreciate it nonetheless.
keep me on my toes. And you were on time, Dan. You're doing a good job. Thanks, man.
That is Ben Standing of The Athletic. He's good enough to join us here on the Kevin Sheehan Show. By the way, that was not a dig at Jarvis Hayes. I loved Jarvis Hayes growing up. His little leg kick when he would hit a corner three was crazy in the hibachi era of Gilbert Arenas. Did you watch that shooting guards thing, Max?
I have not.
I wouldn't if I were you. It was much more of like a Javaris Crittenden redemption story, which was, I guess, fine. I think Netflix's Untold is unequivocally the worst sports documentary series across every single streaming platform. I have never watched one and thought I am better off after watching this.
It feels like it's a lot of hype, not a ton of substance.
They can't pick a correct angle. I thought it should have been like, if it's going to be about Javaris Crittenden, fine. But I felt like they were leading at least my people our age about like, hey, look at this thing about Gilbert we're going to do.
Yeah.
And then it was like, Gilbert's done after the first hour and there's 30 minutes left to go. And it's just all about Javaris Crittenden. You're like, I could have done something else with my time here. Kurt Heelan's going to join us, NBC, in about 20 minutes here to talk the NBA playoffs. Coming up next, which quarterback could be on the move? He's not at OTAs today for his team. He could be on the move soon. I'll tell you who when we get back. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show with Denton Day sitting in for Kevin on the Team 980. Kurt Heelan in a few minutes here. Talk NBA postseason from NBC Sports. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show with Denton Day sitting in for Kevin on this Tuesday. Lynette will be with you tomorrow, and then I'm with you Thursday and Friday. Tomorrow's my birthday. I'm not working on my birthday.
By the way, forgot to ask you, and this is going to take up way too much time. Have you used the paddleboard yet?
I have not used the paddleboard yet. The weather was not great last week. Little rain, little windy, and seeing as the closest body of water to me is the Potomac. If the conditions are not pristine,
Fair.
I'm not going to be out there because I am not going to risk falling into the Potomac.
Don't want mercury poisoning.
I don't want to have to burn my flesh to get off whatever is in the Potomac. But I will use it probably this weekend. There are a couple other bodies of water that are a little bit closer, but we're like in this weird time. Here's your daily Kevin Sheehan Show weather update for those that are interested. We're in this weird time where a cold front is around, as you know.
Yeah, I'm wearing sweats in the end of May.
I'm wearing a sweatshirt. I thought I would be in a tank top at the end of May. I'd be looking out like Pat McAfee on the show. So just with more tattoos than Pat McAfee. But yeah, so the weather has not been kind. Once it's nice outside, though, I will be very much out on the paddleboard. It's a pretty big concoction.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to carry it up steps too. It was not a fun time. It will be a fun time. Yeah. Well, now it's in like a backpack. It just wasn't when you get it in the mail. It's not in a backpack.
Okay.
Now it's in a backpack. I'll just throw that thing. I'll lug it, but I'll just lug it up there. So you sent me a story that I wanted to touch on here, and this is important. It's OTA season. We are focused here in Washington about what Terry McLaurin is going to be in terms of participation. I am not worried about Terry McLaurin not making it to OTAs. I know the contract's going to get done. He wants to be here. They want him here. Those are two pretty big things that need to take place, or need to be on the same page, I should say, to make sure a contract extension takes place. I'm not worried about Terry. Elsewhere across the league, a familiar face is not at OTAs for Atlanta. Kirk Cousins, Adam Schefter is reporting, is not at the Falcons OTAs. Obviously, Michael Penix is going to be their starting quarterback in the year 2025. They had paid Kirk all this money. They had drafted Michael Penix. There were some injuries, some that we knew about with Kirk Cousins, others that we did not know about until after the season. But I bring up Kirk Cousins not being at OTAs because I don't think Kirk Cousins wants to be in Atlanta anymore. That seems pretty easy to say. He wants to go play football. He only has so many opportunities left in terms of years to go and play football. That then brings up the question of where is he going to play? And don't worry, I have your answer, kind of, assuming that Aaron Rodgers says no. Kirk Cousins is option number B, is what I have heard in Pittsburgh. If they cannot go, letter B. If they cannot go and get Aaron Rodgers, or if Aaron Rodgers plays whatever the hell Aaron Rodgers is playing right now, it's not like ghosting, but it's very much stringing the Pittsburgh Steelers along.
Is he the world's biggest tease?
No, because I think you kind of want what comes at the end of a tease.
I don't
know that I really would want Aaron Rodgers right now. Just with everything. Like Kevin and I have had these conversations that have turned into raging debates. Kevin says that Aaron Rodgers was not the problem in New York last year. I don't disagree with that. He definitely wasn't the solution, though, because he's kind of a wackadoodle and a bit of a Looney Tune. And bringing Looney Tune into your organization, Pittsburgh has done that enough. If you don't believe me, Google CT ESPN, and you'll see they dealt with Antonio Brown, they dealt with Le'Veon Bell, they dealt with Ben Roethlisberger, all in the same locker room. I don't know that they want to bring Aaron Rodgers into what they have going on there and say this is going to make things significantly better. Now, the problem for them is it's either Aaron Rodgers
and DK Metcalf,
Kirk Cousins, or Mason Rudolph. Not a hard decision to make. Like, Rudolph is very clearly at the bottom, as much as I don't think that Aaron Rodgers is going to be helpful to any kind of locker room environment. He is, the negatives of Aaron Rodgers outweigh the positives for Mason Rudolph. I would much rather give me the negatives for Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Rodgers over Mason Rudolph, who is most famous for getting hit in the head with his own helmet. That's literally the only thing this guy's done in the NFL. They sent that man to Tennessee. He couldn't win the starting job over Will Levis. And now Mike Tomlin has said we are comfortable with him being our QB1. That's a lie. That is not true. They do not want him. And that's why they have the potential of Aaron Rodgers or the potential of Kirk Cousins. Kirk is not going to be playing in an Atlanta uniform come week one. He's not going to go to Cleveland like I thought he would in March, because they drafted Shedeur Sanders, they drafted Dylan Gabriel, throwing Kirk Cousins, while it would make that quarterback room even more hilarious, which I didn't think was possible. It would make it even more hilarious. It's not going to happen. You're just not going to have 6 quarterbacks. That's an absurd thing to say out loud, but you cannot hoard 6 quarterbacks on your roster.
It's tough, man. Who would have the funnier quarterback room, the Giants or the Steelers, if the Steelers got Cousins and Rodgers?
If they got both of them, God, can you
Dude,
imagine if they got both of them?
If they got both of them, and then you're putting that up against Russ, Jameis, and Jackson.
I mean, if Kirk Cousins gets traded to Pittsburgh, and then Aaron Rodgers signs with Pittsburgh, Kirk Cousins might cuss to the media. He might cuss. It might finally be the breaking point. It wasn't Robert the Milkman. It would be Aaron Rodgers.
He would say "damn" a couple times, and that would be far over the line, even for him.
Whoa, Kirk, like easy there, buddy.
Relax,
They're kids. Like, we need to wash your mouth out with soap. But I just like if he were to leave Atlanta after Atlanta did him the way that they did, I don't blame Atlanta. I think Penix is going to be really good.
If I'm Kirk, I'm not mad either because I'm getting paid a load.
Well, he get paid a lot of money. I mean, he is. Honestly, bro, like just sit down and chill.
Hang out.
I mean,
relax,
bro. If you were to pay me, what does he get? Like $40 million a year? If our boss walked in here right now and paid me $40 million a year to not work, he could pay me $40 to take the rest of the day off, and I would take the rest of the day off.
Yeah, I could. Listen, for $40, I could do the last 20 minutes of the show.
I mean, if he walked in here, he was like, Dan, I'm gonna give you $40. We're just gonna let Kurt Heelan talk to himself.
Okay.
He'd be like, sick. All right, I'll go get lunch. If you're gonna do that to $40 million, I would just not do anything.
Yeah, I'd be perfectly fine.
You would not have to strong arm me to play football again. I would just chill with my wife, who's a very beautiful woman, and my kids, and a nice house that I know Kirk Cousins has. If you want to send me to Minnesota, back to that house, I saw that house on quarterback. It was a nice house.
Nice
It
house.
looked very, very nice. All right, coming up, we mentioned Kurt Heelan. He will join us when we get back at his thoughts on game number 4 tonight between the Knicks and the Pacers. Can New York even it out, or does Indiana go up 3-1? Heelan on the other side. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show with Denton sitting in for Kevin on the Team 980.
All right, the Washington Commanders' final preseason game is set. They will take on the Baltimore Ravens in Landover at noon on Saturday, August 23rd. The Commanders have also announced they are bringing back 10-year veteran defensive tackle Carl Davis, likely as another body to get some depth going into camp. Last night, the Hurricanes, they forced Game 5 3-0. They forced Game 5. They win 3-0 over the Florida Panthers. Freddie Anderson turns around his recent struggles and earns the shutout. The Thunder, they go up 3-1 on the Minnesota Timberwolves, 128-126. Shea dropped 40 in a big game for him. Jalen Williams finding his stroke, just 6 of 9 from 3. He notched 34 points in the win. Tonight, the Pacers, they will take on the Knicks. They get going at 8 p.m. on TNT. John Halliburton will be in attendance for the first time since his courtside dust-up with Giannis Antetokounmpo, and the Oilers look to take a 3-1 lead over the Dallas Stars tonight at 8 on ESPN. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, and hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live from 10 to 1, and Craig Hoffman from 4 to 7. Don't forget to like the stream and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that's what's trending.
It's the Kevin Sheehan Show with Denton Day sitting in for Kevin here on a Tuesday. We get game 4, Knicks and Pacers tonight. Joining us now to help break down this series, react a little bit to what we saw last night is Kurt Heelan, NBC Sports. You can find him on Twitter at Basketball Talk. Kurt, appreciate you giving us some time as always, my friend. Before we look back at last night, I do want to look ahead to tonight. Papa Halliburton is free. Do you think by the second half we're going to be totally done and over that story? Are they going to shove it down our throats?
Oh, God, I hope not. Yeah, at least he's up in a – it's a little less interesting. He's up in a suite, so, like, they intentionally have to cut to him. They can't just, like, hey, look at him courtside. So hopefully we get one shot of this and it's done, but certain networks sometimes like to drag out the drama, so we'll see.
What are your expectations for tonight? I thought Indiana played really well in the first half of Game 3 and not so well in the second half of Game 3.
Yeah, it almost felt like they got – I don't want to say got tight, but there was a little bit of a prevent offense in there. They were hey, man, we're up by 20, we're rolling, and all we got to do is hold on to this. And they were trying so hard to hold on that they got away from themselves. That was the slowest game of this series, one of the slowest they played this playoffs, and they need to get back to pace. They need to get back to playing fast, moving the ball. And that's not just breaks, but their ball movement in the half court was stagnant in the face of much better Knicks defensive pressure. And that's what I'm curious to see. Like the Knicks got to play with desperation, don't they? I mean, they can't go down 3-1. And I'm curious how the Pacers respond to that, because I think you're going to get the all-out Knicks performance. They're feeling confident after the last one.
It feels like tonight, after Game 3 was not the best Jalen Brunson performance in the world, it does feel like tonight we could be in for at least a 30-burger, potentially a 40-burger from Brunson.
I think that is. I think you're going to get a much better night from him. We'll see if that's enough. The question is, how much help does he get? Like, I think he and or Towns will have good games, but they're going to need more out of Bridges. They're going to need more out of some of the other role players. Somebody else has to step up. Maybe it's McBride. Maybe it's somebody else. By the way, Tom Thibodeau, don't be afraid of your bench. Like,
right,
McBride in particular, but Landry Shamet played reasonable minutes last game. Like, you can actually trust those guys for like 10 minutes a game and give your other guys a chance to catch a breath.
Why does it feel like that either OG or Bridges is never consistent? Like, it almost feels like they spin a wheel and whoever it lands on, like, hey, you're going to go for 20 tonight, but the other guy is going to go for 6.
Yeah, it does feel that way. And OG's kind of always, look, he's not a great offensive player. I think they were hoping and expecting more consistency on that end from Bridges, and they need it. I think one of the things you run into with the Knicks when they struggle in this series is that it really is Jalen Brunson heliocentric. And Karl Anthony Towns can do some shot creation, but any big, even, the Anthony Davis, Wemby, name your name, there's a limited amount. Unless you're Jokic, you can't really run everything through him, right? Right. And they need another perimeter ball creator, and I think they thought that would be Bridges, but he just hasn't been that consistently.
For Indiana, how do they make sure what happened in the second half of Game 3 does not happen in game number 4, where they just seemingly forget to move the basketball?
Yeah, exactly. I think they have to have somebody who constantly, hello, coach, reminding them, like, be yourself, keep the ball moving, keep the pressure on, keep defending better. This is not exactly a lockdown defensive series, but the Knicks were much better last game, and Indiana needs to come out and play with that kind of intensity in this game. They've got to do better defensively. Look, as much as this is obviously a must-win for the Knicks, they can't go down 3-1. The margins between these teams aren't deep enough that if you go down 3-1, you're bouncing back. But on the flip side of that, if the Knicks can take another one and even this series, so it's a best of 3 going home, the Pacers are going to be reeling a little bit, aren't they? Like, they would have to be I'm not sure how they bounce back from that emotionally, because they will have let go of the series.
This is a debate that I've had with a few friends of mine, so I'll bring this question to you. Is Tyrese Halliburton a really great player, or is he a superstar?
I think I had this conversation with somebody else the other day today, and I was like, look, I had him 3rd team All NBA, and I'm looking back, so top 15 kind of guy, but more on the back end of that. And now I'm kind of like, maybe he should be top 10. but I don't think he's LeBron James, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Luka Doncic, who I guess took a team to the finals last year, so I'll throw him in there. I'm trying to think of the handful of guys, Curry at his peak, where you're like, man, that is a top 5. You can build a champion around this guy. Tatum can be that guy, right? He's not that. Like, you've got to still have him playing in the right system with the right guys around him. You need Pascal Siakam, who's been fantastic in this series. You need a pick and pop big like Turner. You need Nembhard and Nesmith and all these guys. Like, that is a really well-constructed team around Tyrese Halliburton. And I think you have to do that with him. Like, you've got to build the right team, because he's not somebody like Giannis Antetokounmpo where it's like, you know what, anywhere he goes, it'll be great. Like, you can put him in any system, doesn't matter. He's not that guy. Like, he has to play within the system.
Kurt Helin, our guest here on the Kevin Sheehan Show with Denton Day, sitting in for Kevin. He covers the NBA for NBCSports.com. Can anybody beat the Thunder in 7 at this point?
No. I mean, I honestly wrote and said multiple times that the winner of the Denver OKC game 7 was going to win it all.
Yeah.
Like, I truly thought that was the biggest test they were going to face. They're better than either of the teams in the East, and Minnesota is a really good team, but not a great, it's just not a great matchup for them. This is a tough matchup, especially the way they're kind of loose with the ball. That's what cost them last night. They can't turn the ball over, 20 plus times a game and win, and they kind of tend to do that. And this isn't the mid-teens Golden State Warriors who could turn the ball over 20 times and it didn't matter because they had, Curry and Thompson and Durant for a while and stuff. Like, they're not that good. So this is just a bad matchup for them.
I mean, what has happened to Anthony Edwards in this matchup? Certainly last night, there was a lot left to be desired.
Yeah. I think it's twofold. I think he is Lou Dort and Alex Caruso and the bodies they throw at him are like, those are really good elite defenders, and it starts to wear on you. But I think also over the course of this playoffs, we've seen Ant grow and start to figure things out. Like, he had a couple rough games where, hey man, all right, they're throwing 2 at me and they're zoning off behind and they're defending me this way. How do I beat that? He's like, you can see him processing it and getting better and getting better. And this is the last big step in terms of him starting to figure out how to be that guy. And he was for a stretch, he came out and was much more aggressive in the second half. He can't have that kind of up and down if you're truly going to be the franchise superstar kind of guy. Look, man, that's what LeBron and Giannis and Curry and Durant and all these guys, part of that is that those guys bring it every night, right? And there's, I don't know that Ant's completely there yet in this playoffs, but that's the next step for him.
From the Thunder side of things, how did we let Sam Presti do this again?
Just collect. Part of it is like collecting all the draft picks so that that's the thing that's wild about them. They are so set up to sustain this in an apron world where they're going to have to jettison guys. They're just not going to be able to keep Hartenstein and Caruso are going to get paid too much, and maybe Dort and some of these guys. And they're going to be able to keep their core together, but because they've got so many draft picks, they can either draft guys or trade for inexpensive guys or veterans on minimums or something to keep rotating the talent around their stars to make it work and get guys who fit the system. It's brilliant, but yeah, part of that was also, look, man, everybody knew Shea was going to be good. Doc Rivers will be more than happy to tell you he didn't really like giving up Shea in the Paul George trade, but you got to do that because you're getting Paul George and Kawhi Leonard and you're taking your swing. But I don't think anybody thought he'd be this. Like, anybody thought he'd be MVP Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. Nobody saw that one coming. So it still takes a little, even with Sam Presti, it takes a little luck, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it feels like every single stroke, I don't know, he got a genie lamp or something, but every single stroke of luck that he needed, he seemingly got. When it comes to SGA, do you agree with the foul merchant name that's kind of been thrown at him?
But yeah, by the way, this is not the first time Presti's done it, which is a crazy thing. Like,
it's almost unfair.
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, I'll draft Westbrook and Durant and Harden together. I personally, I get it. I get why people are frustrated. But he bothers me less than vintage James Harden or some of the other guys who sell calls and snap their heads back and kind of really oversell stuff. I think he and Brunson both get to the line a lot, but both of them get lower than you. Like when they drive, they get low, and Shake takes some odd angles that throws defenders off, but he gets under them and kind of comes up into the, I don't want to say he doesn't initiate the contact, because he does, but it's not the pure grift of some of the guys in the past where it's like, and your arm's in front of me, I'm going to do the rip through now and call the foul. And by the way, throw my head back and flail my arms in the air so that everybody sees it. He's a little more, he's initiating that contact, but he's doing it getting downhill. And so I guess it bothers me less, but it's, I can see why people get frustrated, because he was getting some calls, where, especially early in the series, where you're like, really, if you're going to let everything else go, that's your call?
Final thing before I get you out of here, we're talking with Kurt Heelan, Basketball Talk, at Basketball Talk on Twitter. He covers the NBA for NBCSports.com. Back to the game tonight. Who wins game 4?
I kind of like the Pacers in this one, probably a little more comfortably than you'd think. I think they realize the pressure that's on them. And frankly, they were the better team for 3 quarters of the last game and kind of prevent offense, let go of the rope, and, Karl Anthony Towns earning his paycheck. A great Karl Anthony Towns game. Like, a lot of things came together for the Knicks that I'm just not sure is going to happen again. I think you're going to get a better Pacers game. You're going to get a better Halliburton game, but also, you said their advantage is also just like, hey man, this could be the Nembhard game. This could be they've got enough guys who can just kind of light it up for one night that I think you're going to get that at home.
Kurt, greatly appreciate it, my friend. Always enjoy catching up. Enjoy the game tonight.
Take care, man.
That is Kurt Heelan at Basketball Talk on Twitter, covers the NBA for NBC Sports. I am in agreement with Kurt. I do think Indiana gets it done tonight. They're laying 2.5 on the spread. They're minus 135 on the money line. I'm not necessarily going to lay on the spread, but he did mention you're kind of waiting and seeing on like, all right, who's going to have the big game tonight? Could it be Halliburton? Siakam already played really, really well. Nesmith, Nembhard, like they have a bunch of options. The play that I'm looking at as a bit of a prop gambler, I'm looking at Miles Turner to score 20-plus points. I'm seeing it at like plus 230. I'm going to put a little bit of something on that. I think it's good value. And you know that one of these guys that is not Tyrese Halliburton is in for a bigger game that could win it, Indiana the game, and then ultimately lead to winning Indiana this series. So I do like the Pacers tonight. Linnell will be with you tomorrow. It's my birthday. I ain't going to be here. Also, it's Doc Walker's birthday tomorrow, so make sure everybody tweets at Doc Walker and wishes Doc Walker a happy birthday. So Linnell's with you tomorrow. I'm back with you Thursday and Friday. But right here on the Team 980 when we get back, it is the Chris Russell Show, the Rooster, in studio next.